The story begins with us being thrown into a long, scattered stone corridor of a dungeon. Inside, three skeletons have gathered together as if in the middle of an important meeting. One skeleton solemnly announces that the time for the labyrinth's opening ceremony has come, and everything must be as official as possible. And then from a bright opening appears a mysterious figure in a hood making his grand entrance. This is the leading skeleton, and he is also smart. One of them, named Lionel, questions the plan to open the dungeon here. His brilliant plan is laid out in a funny stick diagram. Adventurers come, they are trapped, and we get the money. Our guy, the newly discovered dungeon master, unconditionally believes in his flawless logic. With a wave of his hand, he disperses his bony minions to work. Guys, it's showtime. Left alone, the dungeon master takes a pause, and the burden of his grand design settles on his shoulders. Attention shifts to the dispatch room. He checks his bony guard. It turns out in a past life our guy was Japanese, and now he is a dungeon master with vague memories. Just returned to the present, he scans the area and measures the distance to the approaching carriage. Pressure increases along with the memory of a long, exhausting road that brought him here. Probably it wore him out so much that he invented magic to not feel hunger, pure survival magic. But his dungeon expanded to incredible proportions. It pierced through the entire attic and reached all the way to the end. He admits he called the talkative Lionel only because of loneliness, and is grateful that the rest remain silent. Seeing the goal before his eyes, he clenches his fist, gathers his spirit, and prepares for what will come next. He can no longer be stopped. And here his true motivation is revealed. He simply wants to communicate with people and eat normal food. To him, the skeleton assistant asks if he said something, and the dungeon master only wants to understand why he is pretending to be stupid. This dungeon master only sighs, already extremely exhausted by his own staff. With a dramatic cry, the dungeon master waves his hands, and his bony minions hurriedly scatter to their places. His skeletal team instantly triggers a powerful rockfall, blocking the road ahead. A giant boulder falls with a rumble and blocks the path once and for all. Then he, together with the team, instantly moves, balanced and incredibly gracefully, taking positions for an ambush. It turns out he uses ambush magic that literally allows one to hide inside a wall, and the cautious invisibility is maintained at maximum. From the cover, he looks out and scrutinizes as the carriage, which is supposed to arrive any moment, approaches. While he observes, his security team just sits and cracks their bones, too focused, and one of them even throws a friendly wave from behind. A true professional, and that outfit suits both the team and the work he does. Our guy already regrets leaving Lionel in charge but admits he can't understand a word. From his spot, he sees the carriage finally stop right on time, as agreed. A company of adventurers emerges from the travelers' group, completely bewildered by a well-arranged rockfall. One of the warriors approaches him wearing this mask and asks if he has seen the entrance to the dungeon nearby. And right on schedule, a suspicious crack appears in the rock wall, and a gleam flashes from inside. This party member with a ponytail seems to sense that something is wrong here. Her senses fluttered with alarm. When asked about it, she just brushes it off, saying it's probably nothing important. Our dungeon master is still faded from the wall. His cheeks and forehead burned from the cold. He was all in cold sweat and vainly tried to compose himself, to calm down. He was mortally afraid that he would be exposed and called a creepy dungeon master the worst insult, but then the panic abruptly stops and turns into pure delight as soon as he realizes they took the bait. From the dungeon's point of view, the travelers are simply walking straight into a trap, and finally it happens. The entire banquet freezes and looks toward the entrance, and the travelers suddenly realize this is a new dungeon they stumbled upon completely by accident. At this party, the mage and her companion find themselves in the very center, scrutinizing the underground atmosphere that he so diligently and patiently assembled. And behind the wall, just a few steps from them, the first big surprise is already waiting, the very one he prepared in advance. The round chamber is closed off with coffins, in each a skeleton with a newly made stone sword. Somewhere from his secret position, the dungeon lord watches as their icons crawl toward the trigger point, barely containing his joy. The boy is simply bursting with excitement, while his skeletal minion grumbles about being left behind. This skeleton throws him such an evil sideways glance, and the dungeon master just stands still, arms crossed, and he is openly sulking. His accomplices quietly whisper behind his back. They wondered why he was so slow and were surprised that he could even do magic at all. He only pushed him to yell at Lionel over such a simple arrangement, but Lionel calmly explained it was supposed to take an hour anyway. Suddenly they both laugh and wave it off, agreeing that it's time for him to get to work and not waste time. Real professional dynamics are needed here. And just as quickly, the good mood falls apart when he yells at Lionel that now is not the time for jokes. Holding his breath, he pulls himself together. The travelers are nearby, so he needs to be quiet. But it's already too late. The first wave of skeletons is completely destroyed, and the party has already dispersed. Outside, the carriage is already pulling away. The adventurers found nothing interesting after all. Leaving him to survey the carnage, he finally realized. His brilliant idea of creating stone equipment turned out to be terrible. And then it hits him when the adventurers said, as expected, they meant that the skeletons turned out to be pitifully weak. And all his grand plans to get food fell apart. He had to give up his bony boys for nothing. Lionel tries to calm the boss, who is crying, while in his head only rings the thought of how terribly annoying this all is. But the subordinate skeleton can only offer a useful discovery. They were already dead anyway, a true master of emotional support. Then he explains, destroyed simply means they need magical recharging, like charging a phone, and everything will be fine. This was completely new information for our dungeon master, who looked utterly stunned by such a discovery. He only slightly supports, urging everything with magic, and the skeletons rise to their feet again, like brand new. Lionel solemnly presents the boss with a report after the failure, while two others stand nearby and look with a blank, silent gaze. Our guy wipes sweat off himself, streaming down his back, completely confused. What can he say to his undead workers? He awkwardly utters apologies, promises that from now on he will do better, and the skeletons just stare stunned at this inspired monologue. The next day, construction again. He prepares to apply his spatial refinement magic on the wall from. He waved his hand and literally began cutting entire sections out of the mountain to expand his dungeon. A sudden collapse almost kills him and immediately reminds him, construction is actually a dangerous activity. And with a quick restorative spatial spell, he just clicks cancel for all this mess and the problem disappears. He realizes he can repeat this process as many times as he wants to dig, but fears accidentally creating a well inside the room. After spending time searching, he finds the required floor level and prepares a new spell, Flatten Ground. Barely touching the rough floor, he sets the magic in motion and in a moment transforms it into a smooth, solid surface. A harsh concentration flashes across his face. A completely new, probably terrible idea is ripening in his mind. He plunges into real work. In every MP according to the layout, he takes to the sidewalk, smoothing all surfaces in the corridor to a shine. This boundless passion for conquests of construction is fueled by the devastating defeat of his great discovery. Then he did not get any food. In a moment of insight, he realizes. He never once thought about how his weak skeletons feel when they are thrown into the meat grinder. After such a long loneliness, he wonders, has he forgotten how to be human? So he even asks the mysterious Ko-chan for advice. And then it overwhelms him. He breaks into an endless spiral, shouting that this is the minimum for him just to properly perform the role of dungeon master. Indeed, forget it, he is not just some dungeon master. He is an intermediate dungeon master, thank you very much. It turns out from the very awakening in this world, he constantly heard a female voice in his head just as he imagined Kao-chan. And it was this mysterious voice that taught him labyrinth magic back when, as it turns out, he was far too poor for pants. When he was still without pants, he decided to set a price for his magic 1 MP per cubic meter. And it still shocks that the Kao-chan system adapted to his Japanese sense of measurements. He wanted to make him feel a little guilty for taking the mysterious voice in his head for granted all this time. Because of this, he wonders, is it fate or just a standard feature of a dungeon master? Lionel immediately crashes into the scene, understanding absolutely nothing, while the DM inside notes, Ko-chan is speaking to him alone. And his skeleton is going completely crazy because he has paved the entire territory. And the dungeon master just explained this as a way to survive a grand catastrophe at the opening. Before immediately driving Lionel away, simply telling him to return for some time. Having climbed a few newly made stairs, he decides, it's time to examine his magical abilities. He classified his powers, dungeon building, traps, and personal buffs, all based on over 1 million MP that can simply be burned. Moreover, his summoning magic is not limited to skeletons themselves, he can also summon goblins. Although he instantly shoots down this idea with a denial, he does not allow living creatures to be turned into disposable cannon fodder. Without lingering on his bony team, he confirmed that he will continue to rely on the undead until their rumbling gets on his nerves. He yells at them and tears away at full speed. Leaving their skeletons completely confused, the version of their boss in the form of a stickman simply disappears. He bursts out from a hidden exit into the forest, finally time to determine his next move. Barely sitting down, he realized, to travel the 5-day path to civilization, he needed a new spell. And he finds a quiet corner near the cliff. Calm washes over him like a wave. It turns out he woke up only half a year ago. A dead body lay nearby from which he borrowed his robes. Meanwhile, the map shows, this small shelter is connected to his main dungeon by a narrow passage. Our guy monologues passionately about his glow-up, from a pathetic 10 MP and polished it up to this very moment. He seems to feel how close the outside world is, but Ko-chan's voice cuts through the space sharply, a harsh reality check. An invisible wall simply pushes him back, and he completely loses his vigilance. This magical barrier twitches wildly and trembles as he crashes face-first into the dungeon boundary with all his might, and he unconditionally swallows it, crashes hard onto the ground just beyond the passage corridor. He lay curled up in pain, and Kaio-chan's voice gave him no peace. Dungeon masters are literally tied to their dungeons. Irritated, he only grumbled that he already knows the rules, why make this condescending reminder again? Now he only frowns and cannot get the thought out of his head. What is his true purpose in this world as a dungeon master? After all, his motivation was simple and down-to-earth, to eat properly and communicate with living people. And of course, his main goal was to get closer to a lovely girl, a man of culture. Looking down at the newly paved hall, he decided, if the big open one fails, then he will simply build a better dungeon. Now he looks at his dungeon as if it were a tech startup, chasing product market fit together with his adventurers. In the new business model, it is clearly stated, users cannot be blamed, they will always find unexpected ways to break something. And this triggers serious PTSD from his past life, from thoughts about users who macro-click the button 1,000 times per second. So he begins to create a user persona fiery, probably cunning and hot adventurer around 20 years old. This persona has zero loyalty voluntarily, she does nothing, only sticks to buying girls, and our guy finds this utterly disgusting. And to hook such a guy, everything will have to be broken down into steps to compose the perfect user story that directly leads to a successful dungeon clear. His dungeon is not some frozen product. He must monitor visitors and continuously polish the design. Now his mission is to constantly maintain an updated user experience, and fortunately the MP just recharges while he sleeps. But as soon as he reintegrates into his corporate self-help rhythm, something unexpected grabs his attention. He tries to sew his corporate jargon from a past life onto this world, but nothing sticks. He just shrugs and people brush him off. They say memories will come back sooner or later, nothing to worry about. Suddenly, he feels like he's been lifted up. He decides to upgrade the dungeon's UX and doesn't even stop to ask himself what the heck UX is. And immediately he answers his own question, explaining that it's all about user experience, a true visionary. Then his lecture is cut short, and the camera shifts to his skeleton crew, where an extremely refined debate unfolds about restaurant service versus food quality. But that's not all. He doesn't just mumble in a monologue. He enters into a conversation with this mysterious elven girl who just appeared. He is already lost in his restaurant analogy when it finally hits him. Who exactly is he talking to? One eye twitches sharply and a clear, flawless O-dash flashes in his mind. Because all this time he has been giving a boring lecture to some random, very cute elf, and she finds his chatter interesting. She just leans closer, completely calm as if nothing special happened, and asks, "Continue your story." In a flash of light, something truly incredible and eerily strange happens. She seems to split into two identical copies, and casually asks if he has seen the goddess here before. Our guy's brain is completely twisted. He can't come to his senses from how sweet her voice sounds. And as soon as she stammers about the place he just mentioned, he is already folding everything together in his mind and quickly looks around. He activates emergency evacuation and literally throws himself out of there, shouting that this is impossible. Leaving the girl, he made her look at the empty spot where probably only guesses remained about what just happened. As soon as he teleported away, panic still overwhelmed him because of how sweet she looked, and immediately the thought hit. His spell allows him to just take and nuke from any social situation. And this escalates into a full breakdown. He can't talk to girls, only with his team, a pair of skeletons. And now, writhing in shame from afar, he can't shake the feeling that he looked like a complete creep. Peeking from behind the corner, he nervously estimates whether she has finally left. His heart is still beating wildly. For now, the elf girl is only adjusting her clothes, looking confused at his sudden exit. And if you look closer, you can see she is actually very disappointed by his panic attempt to flee. Still trying somehow to deal with her mount, probably thought he was just so-so. She sighs once, throws the cloak back on, and prepares to leave. And then she simply rushes into the forest and disappears from sight without a trace. Finally, we release the boy from his hiding place, let him feel with his eyes that the path is clear. For about 30 good seconds he just freezes, enchanted by her beauty, with no hidden intentions absolutely. And then panic overwhelms him. He suddenly realizes that one peep can drag him into serious trouble. In confusion, he stumbles over his own feet and falls to the ground with a thud. When he hits the ground, harsh reality slaps him again. He can't even get out of the dungeon. 10 days pass, and he has plenty of time to drive himself mad with his own clumsiness. Now he just sits in a hollowed niche and thinks about his 200 days in this world and how he is adapting to it. A dark gaze like a blade cuts across his face as he suddenly realizes, throughout all his progress, he has neither eaten nor spoken to anyone. Thanks to Lionel, his skeleton army has grown to 500 fighters, and every day it burns 500,000 MP. And now he is completely surrounded by his own undead army, and suddenly it feels a bit cramped. He also notices each skeleton has its own character, a legacy from the times when they were different living species. And to prevent another disaster, this time he diligently repairs all the broken parts. This leads him to a question he never dared to ask Lionel. How do they even manage to understand each other? Lionel just shrugs as if to say, isn't it obvious, and lets our guy mumble about convenient magical systems, but Labyrinth Magic never mentioned anything about being able to communicate with a real goddess, so he is sure it was her. Lionel asks if his boss's magical robes are enchanted, and the DM immediately denies it. It's not magic, just telepathy that allows them to talk to each other. After that, it becomes clear why the skeleton was completely destroyed due to the unprecedented scale of his master's power. And he proves it. No normal summoner would pull out so many skeletons at once and still hold them all. It turns out an ordinary necromancer literally dies if he summons even one skeleton, and this is real news for our guy. So now it's no wonder that dungeon masters have such high MP. Supposedly, he only has 10,000, but it turns out that's a huge lie. Lionel says that summoning 500 skeletons proves how abnormal he is, and the DM inside smugly calculates he can do 4 times more. So having all this power, Lionel asks what the grand plan is, and the DM is more than happy to explain. Of course, his brilliant new scheme is the Dungeon UX Improvement Project, because of course it's his. It all started with a breakthrough he achieved while reviewing his magic when he came across a new skill, craft spirit. This allows him to engage in metalworking and even master crafting at an intermediate level to make real equipment. And the spell also allows him to mix materials and infuse them with magic, effectively turning him into a magical blacksmith. He is busy stamping traps non-stop, automatic doors, and even a magical clock that tracks his MP. He even apologizes to Kao-chan because the clock means he no longer needs to ask her for his MP count. Kao-chan silences him and leaves him awkwardly wriggling, repeatedly returning to Lionel's questions about the army. And Lionel says, yes, the dungeon is now filled with traps, but all of them are absolutely safe. Our guy smugly corrects him. He has exactly 12,000 safe traps. Thank you very much. Leaving Lionel in unexpected surprise, the DM still insists all this is just a greeting for adventurers. He is still inclined to communicate with people and does not intend to give up the dream to not be alone. His goals are simple: to find friends, eat real food, and maybe even visit the town once. Then Lionel just snaps and throws out that he also wants to meet a girl. Meanwhile, he trashes the room and shocks his boss. This dungeon master is completely embarrassed by Lionel's words and tells him to stop behaving so casually. Then he solemnly declares that he is already devoted to the goddess, an elven girl he met only for 5 seconds. Then Lionel asks why not simply summon a mighty giant, and even supports the argument with a drawing of a dragon, and our guy takes a serious tone and cuts off. He has no strength for real losses in his dungeon. That's why he chases traps instead of immediately facing deadly monsters. And his plan, backed by a useful doodle, is to use teleportation traps to simply throw the adventurers out and do it safely. He replies to the point. To return to the cave where he once met the goddess, one must fly at an extremely high speed, and it will cost a staggering 100 million MP. Lionel is still confused. All he heard was nothing but traps in unprecedented quantities, not some luxurious discovery. Our guy just waves his hand, explaining this is too complicated, so they will open the dungeon by the classic scheme, will load it with work now, and then they will fix it. So he gets to work in the new command center and gathers 10 skeleton captains for a briefing. A convenient map shows clearly. The command room is hidden deep in the mountains, separate from the public entrance. From this place, he has a master map that tracks traps, skeletons, and any intruders in real time. And he also has monitors displaying all his dungeon caps, trap activations, damage reports, and MP burnout rate. Lionel nervously asks, is the boss really serious about opening this place after starting the starry business? He is not complaining, just worried. The dungeon master draws a doodle, explaining that this new plan is built on the lessons of his past grand defeat. And Lionel fully submits, calling it a brilliant completion of his master's ideas, a truly well-thought-out plan. This dungeon master simply says his name, and Lionel immediately responds. He is ready to follow orders. Then our guy just rushes forward, leans in, and asks if Lionel thinks the whole grand plan can be pulled off easily and effortlessly. He launches into a passionate tirade about how much of himself he put into this dungeon, insisting the users must feel it. Calming down, he asks if there are any upcoming holidays that could boost visitor flow, but his skeleton has absolutely no idea. Lionel suggests they just open every time a carriage passes by, and the DM calmly lounges in his new gaming chair. But his skeleton buddy looks a bit worried about this strategy. Suddenly, Lionel barked at his boss, look, breaking his maximum pose of complete calm in the command chair. On the master map, one of the 5 new observation rooms flashes with light. The skeletal sensors just turned orange. Our guy's face suddenly becomes stone. He understands orange means warning, and telling Lionel they are leaving, he warns about the departure. They rushed with all their might to the observation platform, carved into the rock, trying to see what exactly triggered the alarm. As soon as he peeks out, he is immediately overwhelmed by the sounds of a real battle. It is happening right behind the door, without any doubt. It is a brutal scene. a gang of bandits mercilessly tearing apart soldiers, leaving only one standing. From his place, he sees how the killers set up an ambush for the carriage, below a complete slaughter. One of the robbers laughs wildly and points to the iron cage deep inside the wagon, while our guy shifts his gaze there. Meanwhile, the uniform tells him unmistakably these were official troops. Lionel gives a brisk salute and, as if it should be so, states the obvious: the bandits won, and MC just watches intently without any worry. He calmly counts the numbers: 5 soldiers against 20 bandits, and cannot understand why his gaze so detachedly carries him across the slaughter, which becomes strange because he clearly remembers what he was in his past life, an ordinary guy from Japan. And then a systemic rule surfaces in his mind: dungeon masters always treat the lives of foreigners indifferently. So he simply clarifies with Lionel whether these are really ordinary soldiers, and his deputy confirms, yes, they look as they should. Ko-chan intervenes and admits she has never seen this uniform before and her knowledge is not flawless, and there is. His gaze sharply jerks back to the iron cage on the cart, and he grimly wonders if they are transporting slaves. Lionel points out the obvious: an attack by bandits on official troops is almost suicide unless the local lord is truly a complete weakling. For now, the bandit leader smiles crookedly near the cage, as if hinting that there is a much bigger plan and reason behind this risk. The bandit leader pulls a small horned child from the cage by the chain and calls him a demon. But looking closer, it is clear the boy is indeed a rare demon type, and as it turns out, he is worth a lot of money. Which Lionel, by the way, explains. This means they are goods worth their weight in gold on the slave market because they are humanoids, but the boy's face goes pale. He mutters that in this situation, childhood does not matter, leaving Lionel completely confused by his boss's sudden harshness. This grim master fights his own rules, understanding in this world there are no human rights groups to turn to. And when Lionel asks if he really intends to get involved, he confirms without hesitation. His skeleton friend tries to explain. Supposedly bandits are humans, the children are demons, but the main character just doesn't listen. Then Lionel warns that this will most likely end with the bandits being killed, and the boy only replies he knows. This video ends here. Thank you for watching. Because this will completely break his exit from the Grand Dungeon, and he has already accepted it. When the bandits yank and poke the boy from side to side, he forces himself to remember. As a dungeon master, he must be indifferent. And just as he stands up, this rule disappears, and he declares that he has his own policy. His key principle is simple: he will not build the reputation of his dungeon on the suffering of others. And he solemnly adds a new rule to that policy: if a child is in trouble, you help them, period. He sharply turns around and orders Lionel to get out. Different species are a worthless excuse for cruelty. Lionel's eyes flash. He instantly acknowledges the order, 100% in favor. This heroic impulse instantly falls apart as soon as our guy realizes he will have to talk to people again. Lionel counts to himself. This is already the 6th time his master calls the skull troll, and he will guess how it will turn out this time. So that he can practice, Lionel starts a little dance, happily showing himself as a smart, talkative skeleton, and our guy at this moment completely loses his mind, rehearsing his loud exit as a dungeon master, a master of secular etiquette. Lionel just shifts his gaze to his boss, and one thought spins in his head: this dungeon master has definitely changed, and in very strange ways. And then the guy solemnly declares that you cannot talk to him for 3 minutes, a perfectly normal way to prepare for a conversation. Then he complains that if he calls even more skeletons, Lionel will have to deal with them, and that is the whole point. This immediately falls into the abyss. He begs Lionel not to ignore him. The 3-minute rule will last very shortly. Meanwhile, Lionel is puzzled why it is so easy to summon him, and suspects the reason lies somewhere in his past life. A brief flash of memories hints at the inevitable: he was once a warrior, hence his leadership abilities. No sooner had a moment of thought passed, and our guy joyfully rushes across the field again with his bony friends. But as soon as he gives a new icy command, everything changes: to go after the bandits and save that child. Lionel asks if it is really him, reminding that he was once human, and the master of ceremonies simply nods without any hesitation. The skeleton buddy makes one last attempt, showing that the robbers are humans and the children are demons. To this, our guy only turns his back and essentially cuts off. And your opinion too. He always tried to keep away from others, drawing a line that he never intended to let anyone cross. Now he shouts that species is no excuse for cruelty and orders Lionel to move immediately. At that moment, Lionel realizes his master's sense of justice is exactly the same as his own. And it even makes him wonder if in his former life there was some connection to child protection. With a gleaming eye, he unconditionally accepts the order, entirely focused on this rescue raid. A bony hand grabs the horn, ready to give the signal for attack and raise the troops for battle. And the skeleton archers immediately catch the signal, preparing to strike on command and knock arrows on the bowstring. Our guy is simply stunned. He never even guessed that Lionel runs full military training during sleep. Yes, the 8th and ninth archer squads were already lining up ready to unleash hell on these bandits. And it's not just the archers. The 2nd and 8th infantry squads also stand in ranks eager to attack on command. Lionel gives the all-clear, confirming that both archers and infantry are ready for battle and awaiting orders. When the firing ports are already open, the skeletal archers take perfect concealed positions observing the bandits. On command, the crossbows are raised in perfect sync. Bony fingers find the triggers. Our guy gives the last Grimcom command, prepare, and Kaio-chan only peeks outside completely bewildered. The first volley cuts through the air and the bandits are covered by a sudden hail of arrows, so they are completely lost. Absolute chaos erupts as the men frantically seek cover. They have no idea where the attack is coming from. They shout to find the target, but the darkness does not allow them to see the hidden archers. Meanwhile, the host simply freezes in shock. His army of skeletons turns out to be surprisingly skillful. While the bandits try to regroup, their formation is covered by a giant explosion and the chaos increases even more. This is a signal for the ground troops. The skeleton captain with brains dedicated in advance orders the 2nd squad to dig into the attack. The skeleton infantrymen sink into the ranks of the bandits, and their panic retreat instantly turns into a complete slaughter. And from his tiny hidden town, the guy cannot believe his eyes. His troops really wear all the equipment that he made so well. One of the bandit leaders tries to gather his people, refusing to give up because of some petty skeletons. He proves everything with one axe blow, smashing one of the skeletons so that it turns into a sad pile of bones. As soon as this becomes visible, our guy tells Lionel to hold the next volley, saying that this way they will hit their own troops. Lionel replies calmly, yes, of course they will be hit. Friendly fire just comes as part of the package. This DM even shudders for no reason, shouting that they cannot so easily sacrifice their own allies. Lionel simply points out the obvious. The boss can revive them anytime, just need to spend some MP, so what difference does it make? And our guy causes a complete breakdown. In panic, he momentarily forgot his own strength and the shame becomes unbearable. Lionel, with a terrifying gleam in his eyes, gives the order for a second volley, while our guy only cowers somewhere behind, as if that's how it should be. This skeletal infantryman is literally being destroyed. His entire line collapses, and one poor soul drags himself. He is directly asking for help because he is already broken lengthwise and crosswise. This chaos throws those bandits who remained into complete confusion. They bustle and rush for safety into the forest. Lionel asks the boss in a calm tone whether they should chase the fugitives. He is sure they will be able to track and eventually find them. But the dungeon master orders to stop and bluntly says, let him just deal with those survivors whom they have already cornered. He explains that the robbers who abandon their own are not a real threat, and by this suddenly shows the cold, strategic side of his approach. His skeleton buddy suggests, when the army encounters this mess, they will blame the mountain, not some random thieves. And our guy uses the moment with galactic brain and declares that this is a perfect PR jump to open his dungeon. Lionel is completely confused and cannot understand whether he missed some key part somewhere. A brilliant plan. A quick reminder from the dungeon master shows a minor problem. He has no rope and magic cannot just create it. But fortunately, some was found among the fallen soldiers, and now it is used to neatly tie up the captured robbers and close their problems. From his observation post, the dungeon master quietly surveys the aftermath of his first real battle. He contemplates the grim truth. To save the child, he had to give the order to kill the bandits. This guy feels a bit guilty, but not the kind he expected, and he thinks, could this be some kind of dungeon master's trick? In the end, he concludes, if the conscience is truly clear, then all is well. A cold-blooded, remarkably practical approach. And then Lionel shifts his gaze to the very reason why all the chaos started from the very beginning. The saved demon child sleeps soundly and is completely unaware of the massacre that just erupted. Our guy starts acting a bit strange. He asks if it's a boy and if the boy is now attached to him, thus confusing everyone. In the makeshift room, Lionel confirms. The child seems to be a demon, and this apparently unsettles the dungeon master. Then Lionel has to clarify that demons are a subcategory of the demon race. A classic well actually from your bony assistant on the skeleton side. Lionel continued the lecture on demonology. Demons are almost human but hostile. And he now confirms the child is simply unconscious, not dying, although it doesn't look like it because they've been through hell. A sharp flash in memories confirms this too. The child was kept in a cage and the bandits barely fed him. As soon as someone hurts a child, the guys clench their jaws and mutter the same thing, complete scum. When Lionel starts to explain something, MC immediately interrupts. The threat is so direct that it can be cancelled right on the spot. A sparkle in the eyes and Lionel quietly says, understood. He definitely knows when to keep silent. Then the Grado Master asks why his skeleton friend was so eager to jump into the fight. And Lionel suddenly becomes too mysterious, as if hinting that in a past life he was some kind of warrior. And our guy immediately teases him. Remembers how Lionel once claimed to have amnesia as soon as he was called out for the first time. Lionel just shrugs and says that he figures things out as he goes while training other skeletons. But this deep conversation is interrupted by two skeletons who strike a pose, and this completely throws MC off track. Kyo-chan joins in and basically asks if the boss realizes that he just adopted a wild demon, and his plans go haywire. And regarding the child, they start to move just as Kyo-chan points out that this whole rescue ruined the schedule. The skeleton shouts that the child has woken up, and everyone instantly shifts their gaze to the stone slab. The boy wakes up completely confused, asks where he is, and the protagonist calmly and friendly explains that it is dark here. To settle everything, he grabs the craft spirit lantern, a tiny lantern he had made earlier. And he tries to calm the child, says that they are already safe in his personal labyrinth. But it looks, of course, terrible. His creepy smile and the bone procession make the boy scream as if being cut. Our guy completely fails the save. From shock, he drops the lantern and the child has a real meltdown. Lionel can only point out the obvious. A man in a dark cloak surrounded by skeletons is by no means a friendly sight. Our guy tries to explain the situation, but the two skeletal figures posing behind him do not help his case at all. And yes, from the child's point of view, this is definitely a kidnapping scene from a horror story. This demonic child full of bravado points a finger and demands to know who they are, warning, don't dare mess with him. Here is the brilliant solution of the dungeon master. Add even more light and order his skeletons to practice social distancing. Then he tries to establish contact and states that his father is some super scary demon. So this is by no means the comfort he was counting on. And no wonder, the boy does not believe for a moment, so he demands proof that they are not enemies. Our guy just freezes with a look completely out of ideas on how to prove he is good when he has a whole army of literal skeletons. That invented quiet, cool mood of the guy instantly collapses as soon as the stomach explodes with a loud, huge rumble. He is hungry. While the boy was distracted, our guy jumps out behind his back with a blanket time to make his move. This child is simply stunned. He even blushes because he just handed over food completely not expecting any kindness. Our guy insists that this is not a bribe, but the child still suspects. He says he cannot be trusted. He shrugs indifferently and looking tired makes it clear, trust is useless, he only does what he wants. Pointing a finger at the boy, the child shows the main thing. Only one thing matters, that he is safe and no thanks are needed. Meanwhile, two skeletons casually rattle their bones, reminiscing about how easy it was to revive their fallen comrades, so supposedly nothing special. After that, the dungeon master asks the boy if he has a home and offers the skeletons escort, saying he himself cannot leave the mountain. Because of this, the boy asks what this thing is, and our guy confirms that he is human, which apparently completely confuses him. Everything clicks in his head at full speed, and he decides that he was saved by a mad scientist conducting strange experiments. Our guy is already desperate from these accusations. He leads the dungeon, not some laboratory freak. Now that the fear has passed, the boy asks, why is the main character not afraid of him, the demon? He answers firmly and without hesitation, saying that essentially there is no difference between humans and demons. Kyo-chan peeks out from the edge completely confused, because this unexpectedly turned into a philosophy lesson. And our guy explains everything even more straightforwardly. He is no longer human, but the real monsters are those people who enslave others. Kyo-chan then suggests, let the child go and he will spread the word, a terrible idea. And this boy just keeps pushing one question, what the hell is he? Our guy calmly replies that, on the contrary, he would be glad to see even more people. He lays everything out clearly without any unnecessary curiosity and saves the boy not out of kindness, but for his own selfish pleasure. And such a strangely honest tactic really works. The child suddenly realizes that it was some kind of calming spell. When the tension subsides, the boy's bravado disappears instead. A desperate cry bursts out, I'm hungry. Fortunately, the bandits left behind quite a nice meal, bread, apples, and cheese. Meanwhile, the boy just wrecks everything and our guy nervously worries how to get him home now. Suddenly, he has a real breakdown. He cries and keeps repeating that everything is fine because he has the skill to ignore calories, plus complete self-pity. After a big bite, the boy just laughed and confirmed that the food is incredible, and he was already completely won over. We left our boy and he froze silently, stunned by such a simple, happy reaction which he did not expect at all. When the boy asks if he is eating, MC tries to keep a straight face and says that he is not hungry at all. Of course, this is a massive lie. Inside, he is simply starving and hates every second of it. This little boy throws a suspicious look at him for a moment still, does not believe that he is really that cool. And Kyo-chan is furious because she thinks the host has immersed himself in his role so much that he has already started eating, and this seems strange to her. Meanwhile, the little boy calmly continues eating as if nothing is happening, while the host and the skeleton observer are watching him from the corner. While his stomach is full, the boy lets out a huge, satisfied sigh and raises his gaze to the sky. Then he falls flat on his back and celebrates that he has eaten to the point of bursting, while our boy just stands completely exhausted, just staring ahead. Then the game master looks around the ruins and immediately realizes this little boy has just eaten a third of all their food supplies. Now this boy directly asks if our boy is trying to drive him away and even offers to take the leftovers. Kaio-chan and the companion are still whispering that this whole situation is too suspicious. Amelia just looks at the floor embarrassed to the extreme and ashamed of all this attention. Our guy just silently looks back trying to read this overly confusing demon child. Finally, he can't stand it. He blushes and blurts out his name. It turns out he is actually Millia. But as soon as that bombastic blow sounded, he immediately falls into a complete food knockout. This dungeon master keeps repeating the name. The brain finally shorts out. Then Lionel suddenly appears to politely inform. Millia is a girl's name and this causes real panic in the guy. Our guy just yells at Lionel because of the scary jump, while the other skeletons keep posing as if nothing happened. At this time, Ko Chang receives from the skeleton a frank, even cruel explanation why they have to take care of the boss. And then the same skeleton casually asks if the boss is a monster. And from these words, Kao Chan flies into an identity crisis. All this chaos and Millia is just sleeping, calmly, peacefully, as if nothing is happening around. Yep, totally knocked out, dreaming of apples and cheese without a single worry. Kaio-chan can't tear himself away from the name. It confuses him so much that he just gets lost in this mess. Now our guy has a new problem. The child is sleeping, but there is no bed at all, only stone slabs nearby. He pretends to figure out how to craft something, but ultimately decides Millia will probably leave soon anyway, so they postpone the problem. His little helpers, meanwhile, only watched how this domestic drama unfolded and sincerely admired it with childlike delight. And then comes the bitter realization, if Millia stays, their food supply is slowly heading into the abyss. That's it, the end. Suddenly it turned out, both demons and humans speak the same language, and this language is no longer so convenient. He pleadingly begs Lionel for intelligence about the demon society, but his skeletal comrade limits himself to silent condemnation. One of the skeletons suggests as best as possible, just kick Millia out, and Kaio-chan disagrees. Our guy coldly admits, yes, he is not a model father at all, and raising a child is really impossible. He believes that returning her to society is much more responsible than dragging some half-baked job of raising her himself. The skeleton tries to report about the child, but the dungeon master simply freezes and fixates his gaze on the leftovers. And then one of the skeletons suddenly bursts into a scream in complete panic hysteria, without any reason at all. Our guy is caught pulling the cheek of the sleeping child. The minion from his boss is already in shock. Don't touch her. He wildly stammers, trying to explain to Lionel that Millia has some special magic. This news throws him back a step, and he almost shouts, yelling at them for not reporting the critically important information earlier. Suddenly, the picture tears a memory of a modern city skyline surfaces, and the scene completely flips. This is Roppongi in Tokyo. A man and a woman are talking right next to a van. Then the camera moves through the eyes of a person who fainted right at their desk in an empty office. This is our guy, his past self, an office worker named Utakiaka. He stretches after a sleepless night. His colleague Ko Shimada asks if he has already by any chance contacted their client. Then she quickly glanced at the clock and showed that he is about to miss the last train home. A close-up on the clock confirms it is already incredibly late and she cannot comprehend how much time has passed. Ko says that her own commute to work is long, so it really is time for her to get down to business and leave. With a worried expression, she tells him, at this pace he probably won't make it home. Despite the harsh hours, she is actually insanely happy that right after school she is working on such a grand project. It turns out they are developing the official website for a film called Labyrinth, quite a big step. She even insists she doesn't care about sleepless nights. Supposedly, she is already completely used to the corporate routine. She keeps whining embarrassedly and quietly hints that Utakiaka also got stuck at work late with her, and he just glances over his shoulder from behind his desk, completely unaware of what she is talking about. Ko immediately steps back, muttering hurriedly, it's nothing, but he only barely smiles and looks straight at her. Inside you think, she is like a little animal and every guy in the office probably tries to hit on her, but... And then he quickly explains that he is not like them. He says she is much younger and they both are office outcasts. Changing the subject, Ko suggests organizing a late-night run for a snack to the shop downstairs. And he throws her that self-satisfied brief look, asking if she really wants to do it. She already knows his order by heart, asks if he only wants the usual ant pen and a drink, so you just hand her a bill, let her pay for the food. With a light, smooth smile, he says to keep the change, a true classic of flawless cool senior student. Ko tries to object that she is not a child, but from just one gesture she still shines. She playfully calls him an old man and asks him to just wait where he stands. And so she rushes out of the office with her snack mission right up to the very doors. You are left completely alone in the endless, empty corporate neglect, as if everything has been pulled out of you to the last thread. But Ko turns back for a moment and sincerely says, thank you. He just looks back slightly confused because sincerity fell on him suddenly and replies directly, right back at ya. She waves one last time with a smiling hand before leaving truly, without any once more. And then a dead silence falls. You sit lonely among rows of dark computer screens. He even mumbles to himself, so eerily quiet spread throughout the place. Just as a news report about the hostage situation in Tokyo suddenly flashes on the neighboring monitor. You glanced at the television and saw no clue, no hint that somewhere nearby a story about an international terrorist is unfolding. As long as it doesn't affect him directly, it's really none of his business. From that news, poeticity disperses. At night, the empty city buildings are called giant empty tombstones. And then the stakes become real. The reporter confirms the criminal has a rocket launcher. Live footage captures the moment when someone shoots out of the window right in the middle of all this commotion. This whole situation makes him remember the film Labyrinth and compare society to a labyrinth. A labyrinth with intricate traps, betrayal at every step, and people who only do nothing but betray each other. He mutters to himself, yes, this is essentially the same dungeon, isn't it? That reporter further warns, now everyone in this building is part of this dungeon. Just then, a huge flash of light bursts from the neighboring building, a perfect dividing mark. Yu shudders to the bone and sharply turns around, trying to understand what the hell just startled him. His brain simply shorts out. He cannot piece together how an explosion far away hits both sight and hearing. Then all the color drains from his face as he finally realizes something terribly, incredibly wrong. Seeing this, he already sees a projectile is flying straight into his office window. Aha, now that's a whole rocket flying to personally deliver him the message of dismissal. The window glass shatters into a million shards as soon as the rocket flies straight into the target. And we tear back into the present. Its skeletons scream in panic. Boss, boss. Our guy lies on the ground, gasping for air with his mouth and clutching his head, reliving his own death again. He is all sweaty and mumbles about a terrible headache. No joke, dude. One of the skeletons dryly says, this is the worst, and is completely unimpressed by how the boss is having his own PTSD attack. The skeleton checks if the boss is still nearby after that exhausting descent back into memories. And the minion explains, they are existentially connected. If he dies, they simply disappear as if they never existed. You just grab the skeleton's skull in frustration. He seems used to such treatment. Having relived the explosive death anew, our guy now desperately craves a bath, and one can only agree with that. His ever-helpful minions are already on site. They brought a bowl of water and a cloth. He throws a burlap sack over his head, while the other skeletons cover his eyes, probably pure theatrics. While he refreshes himself, Kaio-chan appears and shouts, a million. What kind of child is this? What is this about? His other minions are confused. They don't understand where that very moment of stop asking questions went. He nods at Millia and explains that her magic has a disgusting effect. It activates as soon as it touches. His minions just strike a pose and as if casually explain that they are invulnerable because they work on his magic. This makes him think, and he asks, do his skeletons remember their own past lives just like he does? We get another look at his past as a corporate drone, a project manager who literally did everything. One of the skeletons taps his buddy on the skull, trying to knock out the last memories before death. And they say they found nothing unusual, so you're left to guess about this new, strange oddity. Then he recalls, the bandits never dared to touch Millia directly, and this just confirms that she has some dangerous power. And then the skeleton tells how he saw a mirage, a bright, intricate building with a transparent tower. You immediately correct him, saying this is an ordinary office building, not some fantasy spire. And as soon as he realizes this, he stares at the skeleton with a very sharp, suspicious look. He demands to know how his accomplices saw his personal memories, and the skeleton dryly replies, I saw them. Next it becomes clear, that's what Kei-chan said, and you involuntarily understand that they somehow share memories. A complete mind freak. The skeleton twitches with excitement, trying to explain. His deep personal connection with the boss is just a little creepy. Meanwhile, Yu lies on the floor and is overwhelmed by a real existential crisis, trembling with shame because he heard KO's voice from the skeleton. One of his minions freezes, staring blankly, as if he himself doesn't know whether the boss has really lost it yet. Another skeleton tries to cheer him up, showing that now he is much less disgusting than when he was covered in mud, and uses his face literally shouting, I will tear you to pieces now, absolutely furious at that vile compliment flying behind. 2 days have passed, and the awkward tension in the dungeon has probably reached its peak. Our guy, still in his gloomy hood, enters the chamber to check on his unexpected guest. Inside, Millia still lies unconscious on the stone slab, and the skeletons confirm she hasn't moved an inch. They put all the pieces together and suddenly realize her strange power is exactly what allowed them to access Takiaka's used memories. And the memory turns on again about themselves. His colleagues excitedly spread their hands and get totally absorbed because he once worked in Roppongi. His buddy just snorts and boasts, saying that such corporate success is nothing if you really get down to business. Have you ever heard how Buskell explains that the parent company now that really impresses, but their small division not so much? Returning to the present, he grimly realizes his past life was not that good and maybe it's better for him to forget about it. The skeleton asks about the plan regarding Millia, but you just brush it off. Let her sleep and everything will pass soon. This minion presses further and asks what will happen if after waking up she really wants to stay. You sigh heavily and finally admit, if she wants to stay, he will allow her to stay. This pushes his skeleton into complete collapse. He shouts that you did not consult your loyal team about this important decision. The skeleton still whines and fervently questions why you compete with a child, who is literally still a child, over who is the boss here. Another one joins in and gives him a full lecture about responsibility for raising children, food, education, all that. You just waved it off tiredly, as if casually saying, well, nothing, probably it will be fine. A universal slogan for those who I really don't want to get involved in this. One of the skeletons immediately froze in shock, amazed at how easily the boss took and accepted this whole crazy mess. And meanwhile you sweat, inside you call yourself sharp and even sprinkle sarcasm. Because suddenly you see flashes of memories and they are definitely not yours. This spectacle is a gloomy stone structure with a single window through which one cannot pass, thick and dense bars. And inside he sees a younger, horned version of Millia completely broken. It was her memory. She was held in a straitjacket with a core and chain, a prisoner in her own home. Seeing this, he decides, if she is here with him, then at least she deserves freedom. His accomplices immediately on board, they embrace the new plan without unnecessary explanations. A little later, the skeleton finds you are sitting frowning by the wall and trying at all costs to attract his attention. You glance at him again as if asking, what else could go wrong now? And the skeleton waves joyfully, announcing that they are already here and it does not matter who exactly they are. From the entrance to the dungeon you peek out and finally confirm their arrival. And then a truly sinister smile spreads across his face as he says he was waiting for them. Outside, a whole investigative team arrives in a carriage. Knights in armor cover its sides. Meanwhile, in the neighboring town, people crowd around the notice board and whisper about recent events. A little noise, the bandit crew was found completely wiped out, and the skeletons are supposedly to blame. The Travelers' Assembly discusses the news, which supposedly confirms the robbers, yet still casts doubt on the whole story about the skeleton. A man scarred and shaken returns to his friend and clearly asks what he thinks about the situation. And some boy with two-colored hair happily points a finger at someone and calls out to a man named Arres with a smile. The crowd immediately shifts to whispering buzz surprised, because this kid turns out to be a special grade adventurer. Before you is our guy, a special great traveler, a jack of all trades skilled with both sword and magic and apparently a local legend. His scarred buddy still clings to the letter Y and inquires about the reason why the skeleton even attacked the bandits. Then someone clarifies, the robbers were not even killed, they were simply found tied up. And the whole skeleton story suddenly becomes even more absurd. This makes us think when he asks if the whole group was caught together in the carriage. It turns out one of the guys has a connection inside. His acquaintance was on that same carriage and spilled all the details. This source confirmed, as soon as someone stumbled upon the place, the bandits were already in a trap gift and waiting. Our guy of a special kind is officially confused. He mumbles that the whole situation is a complete mystery. This scarred man returned to his original place and admitted that he had no idea why skeletons arrange capture and release with bandits. Ours simply nods with a confident look and says, I understand, thank you, making it clear that he has heard enough and can move on. Wasting no time, he immediately gets to work and asks who will go with him to the eastern lands because the skeletons clearly hint a necromancer is nearby. A real buzz of conversation rises in the guild. A necromancer capable of summoning skeletons strong enough to sweep away bandits is a serious threat. But Ours just smiles crookedly and thinks that this necromancer probably holds incredible magical power. With a confident smile, he swings a real beta mage of such power, probably even more valuable than a magical gem. They unload a useful portion of information. One of those treasures amounts to monthly living expenses, and suddenly greed becomes a great motivator. He sweetens the pill and declares that the Lord's warriors will also be sent to finish off the rest of the bandits. This equipment raises a wave in the travelers' minds. One of them asks if it turns out that the job is actually quite safe. Everything happens just like that. The crowd goes wild, people shout I am in, and some adventuress grumbles that her party got the worst date to be away in. In a moment he gathered a ragtag team, this whole mix along with a crippled boy. Everyone warmed up, ready to go hunting. Triumphantly shining, he announces to his newly gathered party, it's time to head to the carriage. And so, about a dozen adventurers gather together, ready to move straight through Yu's front door. He is already calculating his own reduced share of the loot, understanding that safer in numbers for the wallet is pure damage. With a self-satisfied smile he decides, this crowd is the perfect living shield to buy himself time to escape. It's just survival tactics, he convinces himself, so no hard feelings when he inevitably betrays them. Our hero leads his one-time gang deeper into the forest, searching for the necromancer's lair. In front of the cliff, he stops and ceases to confirm that this is exactly the place where the skeletons appeared, but something doesn't add up and Hours just stand still, completely stunned by what they see. His comrades finally catch up and get lost. Where did their leader disappear? A bad feeling immediately tightens the heart. Meanwhile, the Lord's soldiers approach their leader rejoices, because reinforcements have already arrived. This captain perfectly understands. They outnumber the bandits, yet he is still gripped by a creepy feeling as if they are being deliberately lured into a trap. But suddenly he is left alone shouting in the thicket, and unable to comprehend what the hell is going on. One of his men raises a cry and pointing at something with his finger indicates there, and the ground meanwhile begins to crumble. Here is the carriage of the investigative team, rolling straight to the scene as planned. Returning to the dungeon, Yu brazenly boasts, his plan worked perfectly and his minions, playing dead for effect, lie as if dead. He counts about a dozen soldiers and immediately notices the difference. They have a much more serious mood than the old guards of Millia. From afar, he notices the carriage, and this seems to confirm that the investigative team is already here. So the main event is about to begin. The skeleton asks for the plan and Yu only has a stern face. Oh, this will be no options. Then a small slippery creature emerges, surfaces and calls someone named Lionel, adding another layer of eccentricity. You casually ask the skeleton if they really intend to do this, and judging by the smile, you're foolishly happy from the fear of the minion. With a simple command, he urges the poor skeletal figure who limps away in panic. His minion has no idea why the boss is so carefree, so he asks if he really will just open the dungeon. You start with a dramatic countdown and give the minions the order, prepare for the show. Their skeletons burst into a full sprint, casually boasting that they really don't need time to prepare. While outside, the soldiers are about to take their places in the front row. The countdown to the announcement of the dungeon's appearance begins. This countdown is going and the plan is simple, just open the front door, bud. But you of course ruin everything, knowing that it can't be that simple. Soon he will reveal his masterpiece, a grand response to the dungeon experience. And Hours hid in the bushes arranged to be the perfect witness and spread the news. Because our guy drives this whole event, using skeletons as overloaded staff. And he is also the director, designer, and planner, once a project manager, and that is forever, project manager. Soldiers are the main characters, so they have no idea that they are about to become part of the performance. With a completely crazy smile, he welcomes the investigation team to his little show. And one pale, bony hand presses the execute button, officially triggering the trap. At the last moment, the entire rocky wall explodes outward, completely and wildly. Even you are thrown back by a force that roars through the chaos purely like a scream calling its minions. These travelers and soldiers instantly scatter in a panic, saving their lives from the sudden rockfall. This is a real landslide. The entire mountainside is crumbling and the ruins are falling in a continuous collapse. Hour and his one-time party rush away at full speed. He completely forgot about the loot, because he has no thoughts left. He is in complete shock and shouts that the mountain just collapsed without any warning. His thoughts race, giving no answer. Who arranged this, the dragon or the golem? But then, as if nothing happened, a pair of boots calmly emerges from the dust and chaos. As the dust settles, a peculiarly cheerful tune sounds, and it confuses everyone still trying to understand what is happening here. He has completely lost his bearings, scratching his head while the party members stand staring, not believing their own eyes. Because the entire cliff was replaced by an untouched entrance to a dungeon called Horkil, a promise of wealth with zero risk. This is literally presented as the perfect dungeon, and honestly, this is probably the biggest red flag in history. The soldiers of this lord simply freeze, sweat pouring down while their serious mission turns into a theme park walk. And the sign is carved so professionally that it adds another layer to this whole strange reality. And by the end, freaking confetti starts falling from the sky like rain. In the fog, everyone stands as if rooted to the spot, trying to understand how a deadly landslide instantly became a grand discovery. Finally, one of the soldiers voices the question that is on everyone's mind. What the hell is this? Our guy returned you celebrates as if he just won an Oscar, shouting that his mountain trap worked perfectly. He hugs the skeleton out of joy. He loses his mind and even pulls them because the adventurers have arrived. So now they will also be his audience. But his minion is already completely tired of all these overly theatrical reactions and begs you to stop. The skeleton only confirms. The invaders are no less stunned than he is, the same overwhelming shock. And our squad and his people just stand there, mouths agape, their brains are completely fried. You. As if bursting into his confused game as a director, he wonders aloud how a blank wall and readable text just appeared. He picks up this idea, tugging the question with the name Horkil and a perfect coincidence with the timing of sound effects. So far, two skeletons at the control panel confirm everything worked and they managed it through remote control. With dramatic pathos reveals, the destroyed wall was just a cover. He had already dug the trap in advance. This trap uses spatial magic to absorb the entire falling fragment, so the disaster turns out completely safe. He smugly explains that it was all pure luck. Lionel knew about the gunpowder, so they managed to make tiny festive fireworks just for this occasion. One of the skeletons is still hiccuping with joy through the trap's audio system, but you can't endure it for long. His head is bursting with continuous technical gibberish, an analysis specially thrown together after the briefing. Then he notices that Millia is standing nearby, his face so indifferent, suspiciously so, to this whole conversation. So he awkwardly tries to find out what happened, and doesn't even have a clue whether she is angry because he used her voice for the trap. Meanwhile, the accomplices are whispering gossip somewhere on the side. They say the boss has been talking to empty space too often lately. You snap back to work and shout at Lionel that there has been more than enough from the presentation already, but he immediately breaks down into a tantrum in response, crying that Lionel simply doesn't understand his genius. That little slippery creature even nods along and throws hints to everyone. Stop judging the boss's strange whims. Suddenly an alarm sounds and the adventurers finally head to the dungeon. Outside, everything remains the same. Hours just on the ground, irreversibly losing control and laughing madly at what is happening. His laughter is such that tears stream down, and the battered comrade points out saying this is by no means a funny story. They expect answers from him. The rest of the party already sees that none of them has the slightest idea what exactly is going on. Everyone hopes that their special class teacher will find a brilliant inside idea and handle this crazy nightmare. And Hours, with an absolutely calm, confident smile, simply reads the name from the sign, Horkle Dungeon. His company is still in shock. They argue whether this is a professionally designed entrance because it looks as if a real dungeon is before them. Next to them, the Lord's army commander is also lost by all this spectacle. We just walk straight up to him and declare, a dungeon is a matter for adventurers, not a job for soldiers. This captain reluctantly agrees and confirms that the bandits are located elsewhere along the main road. He is clearly not at all happy that this guy points out where his jurisdiction ends. With a happy smile, Hours announces, the party is heading inside and the captain is immediately knocked out by surprise. Hours gathered everything together. Necromancer, soldiers, and now this is a professionally designed dungeon under its own brand. A quick info dump reminds, dungeons are living creatures that generate loot and they are controlled by a mysterious dungeon master. With a predatory gleam in his eyes, Hours urges his party. An unexplored dungeon is a mountain of untaken treasures. This party laughs and celebrates, but our guy is already thinking about traps and wishes someone else would go in first. He surveys the area and immediately notices. The mountain was hollowed out specifically to erect an overly wide and overly welcoming entrance gate. And then he is struck by a suspicion. There really was a landslide, but there are no ruins here. Everything simply disappeared. He begins to sweat, frantically trying to estimate how much insane magic it would take to pull off such a gigantic disappearance trick. His gaze slides to the perfectly carved sign, and involuntarily the question arises in his mind how in this world it was even possible to install it. He would need a levitation spell to even get close enough for inspection, but unfortunately he lacks that skill. One of the girls in his company notices that he has completely shut down and asks if he is all right. Here he finally steps over the threshold, and his brain immediately shorts out as he tries to comprehend what he sees. His scarred partner immediately starts shouting, "Look what he found." He is holding a wooden chair and with genuine surprise asks if this is the very thing. Because the entire first floor is arranged like a tavern with tables and a full bar. Another traveler has just begun to lose his mind, hoarsely shouting that it looks as if the restaurant is about to be grandly opened. Then the rest of the party fusses and rummages around in search of a large open space, suspiciously resembling a banquet hall. Someone notices what looks like a food kiosk and is completely lost by this setup. And the girl ahead notices a ladder, guesses that it leads to the second floor with rooms like in an inn courtyard, and looks around. She turns to us in search of answers, but he just freezes in place solid as a stone, feeling like this is all a grand, carefully planned trap. She pokes at the sign on the wall with her finger and asks if the dungeon is really attached to the hotel. Her buddy points to the obvious, as if asking if this is a restaurant with a banquet hall attached on the side. He completely loses his mind, calls all this nonsense, and his party just watches him. Then someone finds ordinary doors and a brick wall. Supposedly, this is the real entrance to the real dungeon. By the door hangs a professionally printed sign, and of course, it says the same thing. It is a full-fledged welcome booklet announcing a starter course for 1 silver with 0 risk and a guarantee. Our guy repeats the same thing over and over. He is completely thrown off by how blatantly ridiculous it all is. Even the captain of the guard clenches his fist and whispers that this contradicts all common sense. Meanwhile, you catch a good scolding from the skeleton who roars at full volume, "I told you so." And this skeleton just takes off from the spot shouting that this whole schedule is too unconventional. Yu sharply jerks back and, covering himself with feigned calm, asks what's so wrong with charging an entrance fee. In the background, other skeletons are hotly arguing, perfectly imitating their boss's tiny outburst. He honestly asks if his plan was really that strange, but completely misses the point. And his subordinates nod together synchronously. Yes, boss, it definitely was. His brilliant plan, he explains, is to lure adventurers so that they kill his minions, and then he will manage to level the field. The skeleton points a finger. The other minions are still holding on to adrenaline. They look more ready for war than to be herded on a farm. Yu, with a self-satisfied pose, declare that all this is part of his grand strategy for promotion. Then he launches into a lecture about cappies and conversions, and the skeletons just want him to finally shut up. Suddenly he is overcome by a real hysteria. He shouts that it was the only legal way to earn. Calming down, he explains, because labyrinth magic is a tricky thing, he initially didn't build a dungeon zone. He adds, all his traps are immortal, they are made to annoy, not to harm anyone. He catches that look in someone's eyes and everything becomes clear. Now only one single task remains. One of his fighter friends voluntarily goes first, but ours still continues to look for the entrance. And the fighter simply holds up a silver coin and is ready to check this initial course with his own eyes. As soon as the coin clatters on the floor, the trap triggers, and he disappears in a flash of light. His party immediately panics. They shout, "Where did he go?" and ours just silently freezes in shock stupor. At that terrible moment for our guy, everything falls into place. This is a trap with teleportation magic. He quickly understood the rules of the game. The trap only affects the one who pays, and from this thought he feels eerily joyful. He is definitely not the first volunteer. Others try to rush in pursuit, but ours immediately cut them off in vain because you can't slip past a teleport trap. And with a crooked grimace he comes to the conclusion. The first one who paid the fare is almost certainly already dead. And then the fighter reappears, as if from nowhere, even more confused than all previous attempts. Hunched and heavily staggering, he stumbles and lies that he was simply crippled but still throws back into the banquet hall, all in rage and disappointment. He failed again. His buddy, covered in scars, asked what was inside, and his eyes immediately widened as soon as he remembered. He saw a huge silver ingot, and as soon as it sounded, greed flashed in the eyes of everyone at the party, sparkling like diamonds. As soon as someone heard about the silver ingot, the other adventurers instantly scattered like at a command, a cord at the start. They dived forward and flew head to head. The first flash was truly a full quarrel, who would pay the silver coin and move on. Even his scarred friend catches the gold fever and leaves us all stunned. In a moment the crowd parted and disappeared. Only a few cautious adventurers remained. Ours stand in confusion what the hell is going on, because it's too tempting to be true. Leaning against the wall, he waits and notices that about 10 minutes have passed since the chaos began. Party members reported. 7 adventurers have already squeezed inside and returned, so now only skeptics remain. Ours, with the face of a man about to sign his own sentence, decides the chance is still worth the risk. He throws a silver coin into the slot and thereby officially buys himself a ticket to all this mess. In a moment, Ours teleported into a large, empty tiled room and immediately felt a pang of conscience in his chest. At the far end lies the promised silver ingot, too suspicious, like a giant bait. Our guy immediately senses deep down, something doesn't add up here because this coincidence is way too convenient. The silver looks like it just came from the workshop, perfectly polished without a single spot of tarnish, and that, by the way, is physically impossible. Suddenly a voice without a bottle lays everything out clearly. Find one safe path or you will be instantly thrown out. On the wall on single button, the only clue in this completely minimalist nightmare of a room. Next, Ours starts putting everything together and concludes. Every traveler must sit in their own, absolutely identical trap room. He stared at the endless floor and wonders if the dungeon master just copied and pasted this level. Then he snorts, who would be crazy enough to build dozens of such things? To solve this puzzle, he needs to find an invisible path through the floor where traps are hidden. In his head, he quickly counts. It comes out to about 3,600 identical tiles. And yes, each tile looks exactly the same, but there is no benefit from this. Then he resorts to the good old trick. He sticks his sword into the floor and checks the tiles for traps. This tile magically gives itself up a spoilet, as if saying, well then, not bad trying, genius. A quick lesson in dungeonology suggests, you can't just break through a controlled dungeon by force alone. That's how he understands it. This is a dungeon controlled by a master and the walls are indestructible. Orsaz's face hardens. He concludes that now everything has become much more complicated. He freezes in place and immediately realizes. Memorizing the route through 3,600 tiles is impossible, so there is definitely a trick here. There are no other options, so our people simply decide, press the big obvious button on the wall. He is genuinely surprised when everything happens as promised in words, because this dungeon is pure eccentricity. Suddenly a path of light flashes on the floor, and it shows him the exact safe way to go. It leads almost all the way to the silver ingot, but stops just in time right before the prize. Then the light goes out, and he is left alone with a simple, maddeningly tricky memory puzzle game, the one he still has to complete. He moves on and carefully counts the steps he managed to remember, 6 forward, 6 to the right. But as soon as he reaches the next turn, his brain just locks up, as if someone flipped a switch. These identical tiles provide no help, only an endless grid where failure and traps lie in wait again and again. He completely lost the scheme, and it seems that was exactly what they were aiming for, the main goal of this cruel trap. Our guy starts to panic. He already understands that this is much more complicated than just stabbing a knife into the pressure plate. He feverishly tries to recall the next move. One single mistake will throw him back. He admits this whole story turns out to be much more irritating than he initially imagined. Gathering his thoughts, he points with his hand at the target so that a path would form in his mind. And then a flash, he teleports back to the entrance hall, still stupidly holding his finger on the target. Another traveler casually says, "Yes, failing this puzzle is really harsh. When we are already completely losing it, shouting is useless, so when did I actually fail?" And then he is hit by a simple, subtle, and maddeningly irritating trick hidden in the trap itself. He lowers his gaze to his hand. It is still frozen in that pointing gesture. He tried to find the root of the problem in his head and stretched his hand forward. And his finger simply passed through the air above the trap tile and immediately triggered an instant ejection. He completely loses his mind. He shouts that he lost because of such a simple, stupid trick. Meanwhile, in the dispatch room, the bar graph sharply shoots up, and someone watches this with delight. Yui excitedly shows his skeletal minion. Apparently, adventurers are flocking to his small challenge. Statistics hang on the monitor. In the beginner's course, 16 out of 30 slots are currently active. Look at his profits. He has already collected 51 silver coins, and he himself considers this a very solid start. This screen is completely filled with analytics, from the number of players to how far they get before losing. One of his gestures breaks down the local economy. 10 silver coins and you already stay overnight in a hotel. Yum admits that he was really worried. That initial fee of 1 silver seemed unreasonably high, but he clearly underestimated human greed. A small shadow creature quietly and timidly asks, "Is this whole operation really okay, boss?" Then his skeletal minion points out an obvious flaw. "So far, there hasn't been a single success." Yui, with a self-satisfied smile, declares, "That's the whole point, because if they really won, he would be in trouble. And this reward is a complete fake. He doesn't have any money at all to first make silver ingots." The skeletal friend endlessly chews over an existential crisis, wondering if people will eventually just give up. And you explain that people are smart, yet at the same time drawn to the completely unpredictable. He dives into a memory of how he saw a user encountered a bug that really shouldn't have existed at all. And he recalls his old life. He was tricked by a malicious claw machine. The best way to earn is to make defeat look like something simple. This skeleton asks whether people's attempts at madness are part of his grand plan. Yu confirms everything is going as planned, even when one guy tried to shoot an arrow at the prize and was immediately kicked out. He even saw someone trying to walk on walls. Impressive, but in the end it led nowhere. People have already tried to fly over the tiles and to peel them off, whatever you call it. He has already thought it through and blocked it. This skeleton minion is still trying to calculate everything, asking which teleportation magical trash from dungeon dwellers might work on the mat near the entrance. An internal monologue started. He explained that he is betting on humanity's strongest weapon, their brain. Smirking boldly, he orders his accomplices to just watch how the show unfolds. Meanwhile, in the hall, our group and other travelers have already gathered together and are having tense conversations about strategy. His skeletons hint, for him it's just the same as it looks, and you involuntarily press the thought maybe he miscalculated. One guy lays out the conclusions on the shelves. He tried 4 times, and although the room itself is unchanged, each time the safe route is different. From this it leads to a creepy guess. There are several rooms and they are all identical, so the silver might be fake. But the expert from the party intervenes immediately and firmly. The shine is indisputable proof of genuine, pure silver. He just froze and stared into the void. It is possible to admit that this entire dungeon is actually brilliant. Another traveler hesitates and simultaneously objects. Supposedly, the trap is too simple, it can be overcome by design. Our guy begins to put the puzzle pieces together, builds theories, and eventually comes to one conclusion. Dungeon Master Asterisk wants Asterisk to clear it all, and that is the plan. Then he looks back at the banquet hall and tries to figure out why the dungeon has a restaurant and an inn. It's a business model for regular customers, but if no one ever wins, people will simply stop coming. And then it dawns on him. This key makes adventurers feel like they have won just enough to stay hooked. It is this feeling that they are so close that will turn them into loyal paying regular customers. From the control room, Yui Hidno barely smiles. A smart customer, when you see one, you recognize immediately. Ours will be here for a long time. This boy with spiky hair is being exposed. They say he was the one who hyped up that story about the silver ingot, take as much as you can fit. The whole party buzzes, imagining crazy rewards for intermediate and advanced courses. And you just watch as they get excited, certain that everything is going exactly as he planned. One of his subordinates starts winding himself up. He sees a future where no one ever wins and the dungeon will go bankrupt and fail. One of the younger adventurers has already joined in ready to toss a coin into this problem again. Announcements are made, a resonant echo rings out, and the dungeon is officially closed at sunset. Just imagine, everyone still inside is forcibly evicted and fully compensated, amazingly good customer service. Ours and the rest of the adventurers just stand still, completely confused and unable to understand how working hours fit into a dungeon. This crowd just goes crazy, shouting that the story about the closing time in the dungeon is based on pure nonsense. Meanwhile, Yu smiles slyly and waves goodbye to his valuable clients, having just taken 89 silver and not winning a single time on the first day. Thus is born the legend of Hawkeye Dungeon, a place built on bare, unadulterated greed. Somewhere nearby, a tired merchant mumbles to a boy that it's time for him to learn to handle business on his own at least once. This boy, long-haired and wearing glasses, only sighs quietly. Apparently, he really doesn't like carrying a box on himself. A few scribbles and the picture comes together. He is literally pushed out the door with a bunch of starting money and sent to try his strength. As soon as the merchant leaves in the shop, a woman mutters that the boy Lucas is too calm, and even to his own detriment. She knows this for sure. In this world, only those who work genuinely and make persistent moves survive, and Lucas obviously lacks exactly that. And it turns out she is not mistaken. In 2 months, Lucas hauls tea and realizes that the money is about to run out. Then he accidentally overhears in a tavern how some guys are talking about a new local attraction, the dungeon. They of course start talking about Hawk Hill, arguing heatedly and confidently as if it is actually safe to enter there, just all rumors and hearsay. Lucas listens intently, and even on his usually indifferent face, interest flashes for a moment. His business mind finally switches on. No one has yet opened a shop near the dungeon, so he can make an unheard-of profit from goods with a markup. With a new goal, he decides at least to go and see for himself what this place is. He reaches the entrance and stands right in front of the sign of the now world-famous Hawk Hill. But what he finds is a complete dump. Around there is a pile of junk and abandoned boxes lying around. No legendary place. Beyond the dungeon stretched a whole camp, temporary settlement. People are preparing food and trading goods. This is a real gold rush. The city is bustling, and merchants are pushing their wares to the residents who have gone mad from the dungeon. Our Lucas is simply absorbing everything around, pondering whether every person here is a true traveler. Having entered inside, he overheard, outside 50 people and even more here. You can't squeeze through this place, it's packed. He approaches the first-come traveler and fires a million-dollar question. Does this dungeon even bring profit? Her answer is ruthless and honest. No, it's just a place where your money goes to die. And then she admits, realistically, only our guy has already won something, and our old acquaintance RS seems to be one of those smart enough to take on and learn the dungeon rules. And this girl concludes, Lucas came for a treasure chest, but he admits he knows nothing about it at all. She simply points him to the dungeon entrance as if to say, go and see for yourself. He quickly clarifies, saying he is an ordinary merchant, not some hero looking for a fight. Laughing, she says that maybe that's even better. Adventurers have a much harder time clearing this place. Then she throws him a price, 1 silver coin, so he gives himself a chance to try. Lucas immediately stumbles and starts fussing, insisting that he has not the slightest intention to try, and she just leans back calm as a cucumber and reminds him, for entry you have to pay 1 silver. Our guy is completely mute. It's clear that he is by no means used to being called out like this. And despite all his objections, his feet still move on their own toward the entrance to the beginner course. The next moment he is already in that same tiled room looking at the rules board, like we once did. With an expression of complete submission, he reaches out and presses the big, obvious button. And just like that, our non-adventurous merchant officially became a paying client of this crazy dungeon. Lucas enters the puzzle room too focused to waste time on all this pointless farce. He takes his first step onto the great, no hint of fear on his face. He stands in the center and calmly assesses the situation, the complete opposite of our guy. His brain works on classic RPG logic. Dungeons are places where you fight monsters and take loot. But this place is some kind of strange, deadly, dangerous mystery, and there isn't a single monster anywhere. Lucas quietly asked himself what the hell it was supposed to mean at all, and why exactly here they were supposed to set a trap for him. He is already calculating the business model, trying to understand who built it and why it looks more like a shop than a deadly trap. Next, our guy moves to a direct approach. He addresses the empty room and asks if the dungeon master can finally explain the very concept. And he gets exactly the answer he expected, absolute deafening silence. Sighing, he finally admits, maybe it really was a stupid question spoken out loud. Then he adjusts his glasses, convinced that he has already cracked the code and that only a human could have cleared it. Since then, he simply walks across the floor with absolute confidence. He doesn't even hesitate. He steps right on the deadly tiles as if it were his territory. Having reached the prize, he casually declares that he is now taking the silver. He reaches out to grab the ingot, and it is clear that he solved the mystery on the first try. We flash back to the day before, and the camera shows a pile of shiny silver coins. In the dispatch room, Yui is almost bathing in his profits, celebrating his brilliant business plan. He boasts with numbers, over 1,000 silver per week and a retention rate on day 175. Then he starts babbling about user acquisition and retention drop-off, and surprisingly quickly loses his skeletal minions in corporate jargon. You just laugh at his cap, shake the skeleton who has absolutely no idea what's going on. A true starting villain. His minion throws a look that screams, "I'm completely done with this startup." Meanwhile, he insists and tests his new corporate jargon like a student who just discovered economics. Looking at their pile of money, the skeleton wonders if they can even make at least one real prize out of it. You just, as if from nowhere, pull pure silver from the coins with your own strength as a dungeon master. At first, he simply creates on the table this ugly, awkward lump of metal raw as it is. Then he just pokes it a few times and smooths it out, like that reward for the intermediate course. After that, he already has 3 perfect, shiny silver ingots, although they look a bit small. He decides, a bunch of small prizes looks much more attractive, and his bony friend is horrified by his boss's plans. This minion shows, such fine metalwork is usually done by a whole team of masters. Then his skeleton asks, does he really want to display this in every single trial room? He is answered without hesitation. They have 40 rooms, so the skeleton has already counted. How many does it come to? And the enthusiast skeleton, glowing with excitement, counts, you will need 120 ingots. But that's not at all what you were talking about. A small diagram shows the real trick. Touch the prize and you get nothing. Instead, a teleportation trap activates. One of his accomplices asks in panic, do they really intend to cheat the adventurers who finally won? And you explain, they do not teleport the star player, they just move the star prize itself to the one and only real target room. When the plan is already made, a small shadow creature happily places the real ingot on its pedestal. Suddenly an alarm goes off and someone really triggers it, and the accomplices immediately go crazy. You just watch as a silhouette appears in the prize room and mutters, he knew this guy would come and of course it's our guy with the ingot in hand, glowing with self-satisfaction. One of the minions throws out, an adventurer of a special kind, and this phrase immediately takes my breath away, as if thrown off the rails. The skeleton does not waste time and choose over. Above special ranks stand national-level heroes, but such things almost never happen. Next to him, one of their minions is already grumbling that ours stole their only silver ingot, and it really sounds mean. But you don't care, you say the main thing is that the dungeon works and gains momentum. He is confident. This is a grand PR victory. If we win, the reputation of Hawk Hill will simply explode. As soon as the rumors reach people that the prize is 100 pure silver, he immediately predicts, customers will line up all around the block. His subordinate asks if he really calculated this so far ahead, and he smugly replies, of course, but. And the skeleton points out a flaw. What if ours wants to try again, and does he have the money for it? This throws another minion into real panic. They realize that the stock of trophies cannot keep up with demand. He calmly cuts them off with another rule, the dungeon can only be cleared once a day. And the skeleton just stupidly stares at one point and cannot digest this new information. Yui explains, it's simple, he uses a biometric authentication system to prevent repeat winners. His minion, of course, has no idea what biometric authentication actually means. So you clarify. They scan the iris of every adventurer upon entry and immediately create a unique identifier for each person. This skeleton silently dangles, only muttering, boss, while you calmly ask what the problem is. In a moment, the minion simply calls the whole system crazy, and you beam with pride for his creation. He also wonders why iris scanning in Japan still hasn't become widespread. Therefore, he concludes, he is a true innovator. When asked if ours will try an intermediate course, you replied that it will not be open for some time yet. This skeleton looks confused. He doesn't understand why they stopped the best advertisement and won't allow it to run again tomorrow. You need to remind him of one simple rule for the day. It makes the minions scream, because everything is broken for us. Meanwhile, Arsa's party is already strategizing. They TikTok to show that he needs a serious level jump for what is coming next. You snort confidently. It will take us days to clear the dungeon again, so you give them enough time to profit from it. He laughs to his accomplices about the flawless plan, and one skeleton doesn't believe him at all. And already the next day, the minion bursts in and shouts that someone else has already cleaned it up, and you are horrified. We see how the boots of the new winner instantly enter the final chamber. And this is Lucas, who immediately guesses. The silver ingot was twisted with a teleportation spell. He glances at the altar and there it is already completely empty, without any reward nearby. Suddenly a stranger in a hood appears behind and Lucas is chilled. It is the dungeon master himself, whom he did not expect to see. Our guy immediately asks if this is the mysterious man, the very one who holds this whole quirky operation in his hands. The hood throws a short, meaningless answer. Yes, confirmation of identity without unnecessary words. Lucas finishes everything and concludes, only a true genius could create such an unusual dungeon. She looms over him and says that he has a question, and that Lucas's answer depends entirely on her. This throws Lucas off track. After all, he was going to be the first to ask a question. You cut him off mid-sentence and demanded an explanation of what he was even talking about, and immediately falls face down on the floor, endlessly apologizing as pitifully as possible. Lucas remained in place, completely confused by this sudden sharp turn in character. You explained that he did not expect someone would clear everything so quickly, so he did not even have time to make the next prize. He points to the empty pedestal and honestly admits his stock of awards does not catch up with the winners. From the floor, he throws another tiny, pathetic sorry for the inconvenience, a true professional. Lucas completely loses control, admits that he no longer understands what exactly is happening. Rising back to the surface, Yu declares that he will give the silver to Hours, just not to him, and then curiously asks if Lucas is already bankrupt. Yu in turn insisted that he was definitely about to hand him the prize, but then a minor logistical error occurred. Lucas just silently listens, and one thought spins in his head. This man sounds exactly like a student begging for a deferral for the position. He tries to figure out what the hell is really going on with this so-called dungeon master. Meanwhile, he lies on the floor convincing himself this pathetic act is nothing but a brilliant test of character. Hearing this, Lucas simply turns away and immediately draws the conclusion. This guy is an incredibly terrible person. He adjusts his glasses and says that he doesn't need the silver either, and this completely throws you off track. Just a moment ago, you were thrilled by his successful Japanese diplomacy, a master negotiator and even a real one. But you don't have time to finish the conversation with yourself. Lucas cuts him off, declaring that instead he wants something else, and while there is at least a moment, he seizes the initiative. This dungeon master is completely confused due to a shift in the plan, and just keeps repeating this word incessantly. And now he has convinced Lucas. It is nothing else but some monster playing with his feelings just for fun. Then Lucas asks what he wants. He offers to throw him a bone like to a dog, but you politely refuse. In fact, our guy desires something completely different. He asks the dive master to teach him a few things, no more and no less. He immediately gets to the point. So why, damn it, did you even build this absolutely senseless dungeon? Yua's answer turned out to be shockingly simple and at the same time pathetic. He just wanted to be able to buy food. Then he starts to justify himself and declares, the whole point of this carefully calculated deadly trap is only for his next meal. Lucas just goes silent, because calling this completely idiotic reason to build a dungeon filled with teleportation traps is tongue-tied. This clearly hits your nerve. You sit in a hood and from under it they stare at him. And Lucas immediately realizes that he might have just said something that probably shouldn't have been said. You explode shouting that Lucas finally revealed the truth. He is completely out of money. We leave our guy completely bewildered after this sudden and damn pathetic confession. Lucas just stands still, as if he has been unplugged and unquestionably zoned out after that very pathetic confession. Meanwhile, panic overwhelms Yusufardini. He accuses Lucas of coming as just another rival to come and mock him. Our guy is so confused by this outburst that he turns away and freezes in stunned silence. He is already moving from the spot, and his whole theory about the super smart dungeon master goes up in flames. Lucas clearly understands. This whole conversation is some strange power game and he is not in control of everything. With a say, he effectively admits defeat, and because of this, everything goes awry for you. You ask what this sudden change is and Lucas admits he thought his true goal was already revealed. So he immediately begins to talk about his past, how he was a genius in business school but always felt inadequate. You just stand and watch completely bewildered by this sudden, deeply inappropriate personal monologue. This flashback reveals one of his old rivals, a guy who seems to be naturally gifted at everything. Lucas says he never thought he would meet a business rival he simply cannot compete with. But after all this happened, he had to admit, this strange dungeon was absolutely brilliant. He couldn't even imagine that he could live in the mind of someone capable of constructing something so unconventional. And it was this that gave him the drive he hadn't felt in years, the thrill of the unknown. He struggles between the hope of finding a true equal and the despair of being completely broken, unable to withstand even one-on-one. He looks you straight in the eyes and declares that the dungeon master is even more incredible than the dungeon itself. You stand there like rooted to the spot, completely bewildered by this sudden heroic reverence. Lucas grabs him and flies too close, also fanfics about how he was outsmarted, and you shout about personal space. Having cooled down and gathered his thoughts, Lucas apologizes for getting carried away and says, he just wants to talk. And probably you just felt how this strange clinginess broke off. He nods carefully, signaling, finally you can talk. You start immediately, still trying to piece together what kind of manner he even has. Lucas wastes no time and attacks him, bombards with questions and launches an interrogation how many attempts it took to clear the dungeon. You answer dryly that it was his first time, and Lucas completely loses his pace. Yes, Lucas, the very same businessman, suggests opening up right here, in the prize room. Then he makes it clear that you don't look like a traveler and therefore decides, you are a merchant. You lay out the plan, sell food, provide supplies and lodging for travelers. And Lucas, just like you, thinks, will this sell trust, genuine support, you're just. You throw him a dead, expressionless look and ask if he really doesn't understand. This unmistakably breaks Lucas. He no longer even remembers the last time someone told him he was wrong. And instead of getting offended, the guy suddenly strangely rejoices, choking up. He starts to spill how awesome it is, finally being foolishly uninformed. Our guy is completely confused and awkwardly smiling confirms, yes, of course it will sell. Then Lucas connects the dots and instantly realizes, if the dungeon closes at sunset, travelers will need supplies. He asks if this is the same business you want to talk about, and our guy simply points to him, get to the point quickly. This business genius is wildly delighted because he finally understood. This is his ticket to unlimited time and with a new idol. He is so into it that he is ready to start immediately, trembling with excitement. And you, meanwhile, are just trying to survive under the weight of his personality, tossing weak thank you back and forth. After the agreement, you call the first official meeting. With one sweep, you pull out the table and chairs. But then a thought flashes in Lucas's mind. He remembers that you previously called yourself a novice. It is immediately clear to Lucas, no ordinary novice could have such intellect. He turns around and asks us what we think about it. Meanwhile, you just sits relaxed with a drink and explains. The dungeon was not dangerous, just unfamiliar. Our teammate dryly remarks, saying, yes, a different approach, that's definitely one word for it. Lucas bursts into a crazy laugh, and the woman involuntarily asks if he is okay at all. But he is lost in his own world and spills thoughts about how he first met intelligence, and it gives him real hope. Without unnecessary words, he turns around and starts to leave, announcing that he is returning back to the city. Then he solemnly announces his grand plan. He will be the first person to open his own business here. And he is not just walking, he is sprinting, shouting that he will become the #1 used student. This is already a cult. He just watches as that one leaves, completely confused, and cannot understand what exactly is wrong with this guy. Note on the character card, Lucas's flaw is overthinking as soon as he realizes that the return to the city is a 3-hour journey. Already the next day, a new store appeared next to the Dungeon Hills shop. Nearby stands Hills Restaurant. The staff is in place, and it seems the establishment is ready to operate. To complete the instant business district, a new hotel appeared here, the Hawken. Simply. He stands as if rooted to the spot and cannot believe his eyes. None of this existed yesterday. Suddenly, Lucas finds himself behind the registration desk and flawlessly names the room prices as if he were the owner here. The traveler immediately jumped closer, asked for a shared room and currency exchange. This innkeeper offers guests a favorable exchange rate without any commissions. A clean and very smart business tactic. And this new tavern is unexpectedly large, as many as 15 rooms and a total capacity of 60 people. Inside, adventuralians are already filling everything, settling in as if they were expected here. The employee leads to the room. Simple, classic, no-frills bunk beds for those who count every penny. Next, he shows the toilet. It is at the end of the corridor, and this seems to be a usual thing for the inn. And Luke immediately begins to look closely at it, because they are on the 3rd floor, and in this world usually only latrines are kept on the upper floors. This worker explains simply, in the toilets, waste is purified daily with magic stones once a day. So this is already some kind of premium level plumbing. Lucas, absolutely without emotion, says that it is a closed loop, so there are no problems and he does not care how exactly the technology works. This poor guy just freezes, unable to find words. His brain completely stalls from the mundane, relaxed assessment. Then he boasts about the shell, saying it contains a water magical stone that supplies running water on demand. This employee quickly adds that there is nothing special about this, so he asks to use it without hesitation and does so as if trying to belittle the very genius. He asks Lucas to simply say if any problems suddenly arise, almost pleadingly, so that he does not get worked up. As a bonus, he also gives a discount card for the restaurant, a classic move in customer service. Lucas just watches as that one hurriedly runs away, and in his head, thoughts about all this clearly spin. Turning back to the reception, he sees, on the empty, as if weathered, table lie several photo frames. Suddenly, Lucas calls someone off-screen, a sharp, focused look, and that is it. And here you appear and ask what Sensei wants now, as if you don't see what is happening in this whole situation. Lucas throws a self-satisfied smile and asks if that makes him a student. Oh, he damn well likes this dynamic with the unofficial open for business sign, they walk around their brand new, completely empty lobby. Lucas immediately points out the one glaring problem. they have absolutely zero clients. You admit, yes, after the first day of opening, things are moving a bit slower, a true master of restrained phrasing. And you lay out your theory. Most adventurers prefer to just camp outside for free rather than pay for a room. The plan is simple. Bring the tavern to such a level of coziness that people naturally gravitate towards luxury and pay for it. In one of the rooms, you announce their next big project, a bathhouse, and Lucas immediately perks up. He asks what type of bathhouse is popular here, and you answer with one word: steam. Lucas is already mapping out a sauna in his head, calculating what heating system is needed to maintain the right temperature. Lucas immediately grabs onto the sauna idea. His business mind is already spinning options. You just brushed him off, asking if there are any other problems with the entrance, and Lucas, fully immersed in the role of the new apprentice, blurts out. He has a whole list of things his sensei should teach him. Our guy calmly states that he is a complete amateur and that he put this place together haphazardly, so come on in. Considering this a formal invitation, Lucas immediately moves on to a full-fledged business critique. There, his first point: nowhere to wash or dry a pile of laundry. This river is too far, zero practicality, and laundry turns into a logistical nightmare. Moreover, the corridors are so narrow that even moving large furniture is impossible. And he says outright, the house layout facing east makes the whole feel gloomy and it knocks you off your feet. Having waited until all the problems are thoroughly listed to him, he only calmly and evenly says he will take care of it. His estimate for a complete architectural overhaul is only 2 to 3 days, and that is enough to literally unnerve Lucas. You break down completely. You explain, expanding the building using dungeon magic is elementary. He just needs to properly prepare for the fact that there will be more people. And then he throws the title sensei right back at Lucas, who freezes on the spot, stunned. A little later, Lucas notices. The lobby suddenly became much more crowded and cannot figure out what happened. He glances at the clock for a moment and immediately understands. The time of day is probably the main key. This guy is already tracking data and notes. The number of opponents has increased by 20 compared to yesterday. You casually corrected his terms and clarified whether he meant statistics, not just numbers. This word statistics completely stops Lucas in his tracks, and this is definitely not amateur level. He has a brief panic attack. It seems like basic data analysis here, like some alien idea. But Lucas immediately clarifies. No, this is an extremely specialized field, and because of that you look even smarter. Lucas says that although he understands the value of statistics, for most people this concept has already lost its meaning. His forecast is simple. As soon as more contenders arrive, INS will flourish on its own and you are still unimpressed. You completely drowned everything out with words about how the current crowd is holding only on our success. The real wave is still ahead, and it will definitely come. Confused, Lucas just freezes in place, bewildered, losing his train of thought, and repeats the words of the next wave. Our guy explains, the prize was not just silver * pure silver. And as soon as this news spreads, a golden frenzy will cover everyone. You succeeded, and you completely knocked the sense out of Lucas. He cannot believe that you have planned a second, greed-filled crowd assault. Internally, it works the same way. Yes, he is smart. He notices that Lucas understands the two-wave strategy. So he just leans back and tells Lucas to lay out his forecasts. Lucas is all confused and excited, as if he is about to present a report on a book to his hero. First, he will make it so that everyone knows. This dungeon gives a real, valuable reward. Then he hints there is another, even bigger factor that decides everything here. The confirmation is silver, 100 pure, you just have to give the board again. Lucas almost explodes from the confirmation, shouting that he knew it. This is. The reason why this is such a big deal is simple. 100 pure silver is technologically impossible, so its very presence is a colossal magnet. Meanwhile, Use thought, if this was a dungeon function, he never expected Lucas to use it for improvement. With a click, Lucas declares, as soon as the rumor spreads, people will appear from everywhere. This is the second wave. And he again switched to full worship mode, pouring out praises to his sensei for a business model that no one had ever invented. You just boldly smiled and threw the word branding at him, and Lucas was completely confused. Our guy lays out his two main principles. It is absolutely safe, and the reward is only for the chosen. To top it all off, anyone can try without any expectation, an absolutely irresistible offer for any adventurer. Lucas just nods, and his head is buzzing. He is spinning that branding idea. Then he asks what you meant when you talked about the problem in the surrounding area. That was his main fear. We keep impassive faces. The dungeon's supposedly a walk, but the road to it through a forest full of monsters, not at all. That is why the entrance is brilliant. It is a clean, safe refuge from all that wild nonsense. It is. This light bulb goes out and Lucas simply bursts with pure, flawless business ecstasy. He finally understood it. You ask if it's an asterisk because you found it out, and our guy just gives a drained yes and looks completely exhausted. You notice Lucas is already handing out plates with the Hawkhill brand, instantly grasping the idea. He sits and gets into the role. Sitting like a king on his own throne, you ask about the plates, and Lucas immediately starts apologizing for losing it earlier. You just cut him off and explain that it's not a problem. Isn't that the whole point of branding? Lucas slides a plate with the crazy eyes of a true fanatic, and you are quite justifiably overwhelmed by fear. It turns out this madman paid to have everything custom made overnight, and now he trembles with pride over his design. You ask where he got the money, and Lucas so casually and matter-of-factly admits, supposedly he took out a loan. Then he presses you with all his might and basically states that he is putting on the line for this business to succeed, and his own reputation is at stake. You panic incessantly, sure that this man will really kill him if everything goes awry. Later you show some intermediate magic of formation sitting on the toilet. As always, completely mundane, as if nothing special. Lucas remains completely silent, his mind is turned upside down by this mundane demonstration of high-level magic. And with a radiant flash, you summon a whole bunch of plates as if you just grabbed 100 at once somewhere, applying dungeon magic. Lucas picks up one item, freezes for a moment, and concentrating to the limit, carefully examines the magically created product. He notes Yushi's design has slightly different features, but it is much more beautiful than his own hasty version. You just shrugged as if it came out more beautifully with a nicer font, because you are good at such things. Lucas is simply overwhelmed with admiration for the craftsmanship of this plate. He showers compliments on its perfect curve, as if every line is a separate magic. You threw it casually without any trick, as if this is a universal design like nothing special. And that word completely shorts Lucas's brain. Universal. Our guy explains it like this: a design that anyone can use, rounded edges so in a fantastic world you don't poke yourself. This idea completely shatters Lucas's reality, leaving him utterly speechless. He just stands still and tightly grips the plate, trembling from the pure brilliant absurdity of it all. This poor guy had a real fan meltdown over basic ergonomics. You've really tired him out, basically said, hold it together enough, but it's just a plate. Then he states that he has high hopes for Lucas, so he can confidently justify them. Such praise from his sensei almost throws Lucas into another dimension. Tears well up and he swears he won't betray the trust, vowing to bring this matter to success. At this level of dedication from Lucas, when he asks for his next orders, it's chilling. His brilliant solution to this awkward heroization: let's go eat. Cut in the scene in the restaurant. Here he is already surrounded by happy travelers. They head towards very luxurious doors deep inside the establishment. And of course there is a VIP room sign. This place has everything. Inside, Yu sits all alone at a huge, otherwise empty dining table. He is drooling with anticipation, and steam is coming off him like from a cartoon. Then the main course arrives: a gigantic shiny rock dragon roast beef. This boy is simply going crazy with joy. Now he will eat a real dragon. This steak sizzles wildly, juices and sauce are bubbling, producing a truly divine sound. Yui cuts into the meat again so tenderly that the juices immediately start flowing abundantly. His face distorts for a moment with a short circuit from the sheer mad anticipation of this feast. He lifts the perfect portion, the literal food of his dreams, after being pulled into another world, and it hits even harder when you remember that he lived 200 days converting magic into energy using. With tears in his eyes, he finally utters a human thank you for the food, and only after that does he bite into the plate. He takes that same first famous bite, and you feel the world stop for a moment. And then the taste in just seconds explodes in his mouth. Our guy sobs from pure, untouched joy, completely conquered by the flavor. He almost flies across the room and shouts that garlic sauce is the perfect pair. Even Lucas can't stand it. He has a full-blown emotional breakdown, sprinkles words about how tender dragon meat is. In a fit of food madness, a knife was stuck into Lucas's chest and he was ordered, bring more. Lucas is completely confused by this order, and you yourself stand bewildered in a state of pure meaty bliss. And then he just fell face down on the table. It turns out steak is too much even after half a year of hunger. After 2 weeks, some figure in a cloak peeks out and secretly watches the territory around Hawk Hill. This is our first adventure. Rito, clear the dungeon. So he looks completely confused when he sees what happened. He notices the number of people camping outdoors for free has sharply dropped to nothing. At first it seemed everyone was cautiously watching the arrival, but a few brave ones still risked it and tried it themselves. And now the rumor spreads like wildfire. Everyone keeps saying they praise the steam room with all their might. He just slapped his face with his palm and immediately realized he missed all the best. Ours notices. This entire schedule is essentially set up to catch adventurers and integrate them into the dungeon economy. At the same time, he tries to find out who Lucas is, this amazingly skillful merchant who just appeared out of nowhere. There must be a famous businessman, and it is in this master that he works, but no one has heard of ours yet, not even his name has ever been mentioned. Putting these thoughts aside, he focuses on the main thing, what the hell he should do now. A memory surfaces in his mind. 2 other people finally passed the initial level just a few days ago. That's how the rumor caught it. And the reward for that clean hit is the legendary 100 pure silver, the source of all this madness. That money instantly attracted a storm of offers to him. From traders, from researchers, everyone was reaching for the impossible metal. He exchanged 3 of his ingots for the life-changing one, 1,200 silver coins, a payout that makes your head spin. But there was no avoiding treachery. The level for beginners suddenly became much harder, and now he simply cannot overcome it. So one thing spins in his head, whether he will have to completely rebuild the strategy to pass it again. His first method is pure memory. He tried to learn those 10+ trap patterns that he had already managed to identify. That brilliant plan failed every time brilliantly, simply fantastically. So he changed tactics, cleared a 30-meter patch of grass to practice counting distances with his eyes closed. The task was simple and harsh, to remember where the trap is so as not to fall for the visual cues on the floor. In the end, this forced him to blindly crash into other contenders, a wonderful sight for the first champion. But after 14 exhausting attempts, thanks to this method, he finally managed to clear the dungeon again. The very next day he returned and immediately encountered that the difficulties had sharply increased again. Now there are red and blue tiles. Red are always bad and blue are only sometimes a trap with a star to really get you. His blind strategy is now completely pointless, and he is seriously considering just giving up. After another 100 failures, he has been stuck for 3 days and he has no new ideas left at all. Our trio does not calm down. They torment this puzzle over the other 2 winners, deciding that they must have been in despair after 100 attempts. While he whines on the stone, a group of travelers approaches him. He himself would like to sit gloomily in silence and keep calm, but he notices them nearby. A confident guy with 2 friends approaches right up close and freezes in surprise, seeing that our rich man set up camp right here. Only one looks somewhere into the void and weakly asks what they actually want. This trio hangs over him, clearly hunting for what belongs to the first champion from the dungeon. Their leader, a guy with spiky hair, repeatedly smiles predatory, still stunned that the famous RS live without luxury. Our guy is unimpressed. He scans everything with a glance and states that they really have a great party while he himself suffers meanwhile. Next, he starts bragging about how he sold his silver award for 3 gold coins. This finally finishes him off. He pulled a huge jackpot, so it turns out the price really falls to 0. He still remembers the first time when he was caught from a transparent net for an ingot worth 12 gold coins, and now the price is plummeting into the abyss. With each new winner, the supply of pure silver increasingly floods the market just as he feared. The guy with spiky hair steps up to speak. They must unite and share information. His brilliant plan is simple: to combine their one-time, precise knowledge to calculate the second run. He only stares intently, understanding down to his nerves. This guy is just as tense and irritated as he is. He recalls all the other travelers who have already tried to get at least something out of him. His rules are simple. He exchanges information only for something of equal value, but no one can offer anything. So he immediately calms that man down, cutting off without hesitation. There is no mutual benefit here. But the boys' friends flare up with anger. They mock that our first clear result was probably just a coincidence. The leader snaps back right away. That's exactly why everyone calls him Stingy R. That's his reputation. This boy with spiky hair whines and complains, saying we are hypocrites because we don't share information with other travelers. He throws a tantrum, accusing Hours of just trying to show off, saying, "Let's go break the dungeon gate alone." Moping mumbles under his breath, clearly disappointed, saying the great traveler is just a petty fool. Orer simply throws him a look dead and soulless and warns, "Don't act too confident." That cold look can instantly silence him. His ego clearly took a direct hit. Well, of course, his next move is to call his buddies to surround Hours and finish them off. Diplomacy as it is, oh damn. A whole crowd of boys with homemade weapons gathers closer. It's clear they are ready to fight. He calmly surveys everything around. There are 6 of them, and it's long past time for him to move on. Fingers grip the hilt, the hand rests on the sword as he considers. Maybe this is the right moment to finally free his hands. Then he challenges the whole crowd and offers to teach them what a true adventure of a special class is. This leader just shouts, "Shut up," and completely loses his composure as soon as he sees the confidence with which he. With a battle cry, the crowd rushes forward, and Hours do not move an inch, calm as if they do not care. One of the thugs swings a club with all the grace of a falling tree. He effortlessly dodges the clumsy blow and makes the guy swing at empty air. He has already passed the first attacker without even breaking a sweat. His face is pure unmasked boredom. For him, this is not even a warm-up. This leader desperately pulls the team. Surround him and pin him to the ground, a truly brilliant strategy. One of the bigger guys tries to grab him from behind, and you can see how immensely pleased he is with himself. And Hours just plants his foot in place and prepares a little surprise for that arriving thug. And with a simple sweeping hold, he throws that guy over himself head over heels, and the plan is just starting to break down. This big backpacker twisted, jerked upwards, kicked his legs, and shouted that he must not be underestimated. But it was already too late, friend. While the enemy has not yet managed to find footing, Hours are already closing the distance to immediately start the next capture. And he, without any ceremony, simply jams his fist right into that guy's face. Another tries to knock us down with a club, swinging blindly, but ours dodges the blow as if it's flying in slow motion. Now these guys complain that he is too small a target, and this immediately becomes a new excuse. Supposedly we are bad at fighting. Ours simply jerks his hand and throws back their pathetic attempt to threaten, as if it's worthless. Their leader trembles wildly. His brilliant plan falls apart completely too spectacularly. Without turning for a moment, he somehow knocks out another thug with an explosion of force. He has the audacity even to smile and think that maybe he overdid it a bit. Another guy from the gang flies away with one perfectly aimed blow. This leader with spiky thorns on his head just stands and watches as the whole squad is torn apart, and then completely loses his mind. In February, he yells at us because we have gotten out of control and become too arrogant. Meanwhile, in another part of the story, Yu is hanging out with a skeleton comrade. His bony friend notes, "The new clothes are by no means bad apparently, they lifted the barefoot into a good mood." You say that he can finally go to a restaurant, although he still feels a bit nauseous. When he was walking through the dungeon corridors, he suddenly stopped. He heard something from a side passage. Inside, two skeletons are looking at a monitor as if in a control room. He asked them to show him what was happening on the surface. He was curious about the commotion. His eyes widen sharply with surprise when he says to his skeletal friend Lionel, "Check this out." On the screen, they see how in this very fight our guys are scattering them, and they are thoroughly shooting these adventurers. Lionel throws 6 against 1 and asks, "Director, should I go teach them a lesson?" You with a completely stone face correct him, "It's just 6 guys." Returning to the surface, the scoundrels are confident that they have cornered us just by surrounding him. But ours effortlessly pushes them all aside, ordering them to watch more carefully. Suddenly, complex magical circles begin to materialize around him, and he with all his might strikes the ground with his fist, releasing a spell that splits the earth itself. In the dispatch room, you and Lionel go crazy when the iron armor spell starts tearing the system apart. You immediately want to learn it, but Lionel explains he doesn't have the necessary abilities. Because of this, our guy falls into a real hysteria due to his extremely worthless powers, which rely only on traps. Lionel sharply pulls him back and shows that the other guy is also casting a spell. This leader with a spiky tuft desperately weaves signs with his hands, preparing a counterattack. He puts all his concentration into this last gambit to the last drop, and finally releases a huge lightning discharge, another powerful mid-level spell. Yu is completely stunned by the stars. From all this cool stuff, he excitedly trembles in the knees and literally immerses himself in a fan's focus on attacking Raiden. Of course, he wants to learn *1-2, but he is confused again because he lacks the necessary affinity. So he grumbles again and demands that Dungeon Core Kao-chan give him at least some combat magic. Kao-chan appears dryly and without any emotion and reports that she has no offensive spells in reserve. Oh. Then she asks if maybe her delivery was too cold. This is another level of emotional devastation like. While somewhere in the background Kao-chan quietly sighs, Lionel tries to comfort you completely broken. Meanwhile, the fight is already over. R stands victorious over the punk leader. R towers over the punk leader who is now swallowing dust and regretting every life choice. Under the floor, you lose your head from the lightning, but Lionel clarifies, "We used an item to dodge the blow." Taking a direct lightning strike and still roaming around this makes you realize how crazy the special great traveler is. Lionel behaves smugly, emphasizing that he warned not to underestimate this guy, the classic, "I told you so." Wandering around his chibai, they concluded, if ours gets stuck, he will probably just give up and leave in a few days. Yes, they are right, everyone already understood this. If there is no more profit, it's time to pack up and go home. This gives you a brilliant, terrible idea, to open a second dungeon for beginners to keep his new toy close by. Suddenly, a tiny skeleton in sunglasses appears on the screen, the embodiment of the pure coolness of this overly responsible decision. Lionel, however, is not fooled by the cool guy image. He only asks if you are really sure about this. You sit and have not the slightest idea why there is so much noise, but he is just about to release it. His bony friend immediately panics. He says it's a huge mono drain, and Yu just snorts defiantly with his 3 million points. With a dramatic punch upwards, he officially declares the second dungeon open, and Lionel dies a little inside. The skeleton team immediately gets to work ready to execute the boss's new, not at all trouble-free plan. In a moment, a tiny skeleton fool darts back like an arrow and flies to the boss with a report. Meanwhile, 2 other skeletons are already gossiping about the whole story. Dungeon life is never boring. This messenger reports a critical situation that has arisen. It sounds much scarier than it probably really is. You freeze in place and suddenly realize, this is a report from the demonic tribe's room. Then he just froze and his skeleton immediately asks if the boss has seriously forgotten about it already. Lionel simply explodes and recalls the demon lad he saved. How could he have forgotten about that? You look embarrassed but insist on your point. He definitely remembers how he essentially told everyone to shut up before they could expose him. You finally ask what is going on, considering that the demon savage looks completely indifferent and totally uninterested. Lionel says that the boy who had been unconscious all this time has finally woken up. You immediately feel the urge to clarify. How long has she been gone? She clearly lost count and lost track of time. Lionel is bursting with arrogance, as if on his part it took very little time at all. Thank you, Bonedead. Meanwhile, in the demon children's room, someone is definitely starting to stir. Around the corner you peek out and, taking a breath, confirm. The demon child has officially gotten up and is fidgeting. She opens her mouth in a giant yawn and seems not to notice the skeletons peeking through the door. This demon girl stretches, commenting on her long sleep while you completely lose your mind in the background. Her eyes suddenly snap open. She suddenly realizes that everything feels different. Her first thought right after waking up, I'm hungry. Perfect, just perfect for the poor embarrassed you. She asks if he is even listening, but our guy is too busy trying not to flare up right now safely. He just waves his hand and yells for her to shut up because she just woke up. Such hospitality right here on the spot. She responds with a look completely puzzled by his outburst and unable to figure out what he is even about. Our guy is wide-eyed, stammering that she has grown about 30 centimeters since the last time he saw her. And the thing is not only that her height suddenly started to grow. A noticeable slowed-down spurt is observed in other things too. She even notices that her body has noticeably strengthened, just in case he hasn't noticed it yet. This new information throws you into a state of pure, vibrating panic. So she just slams him down and yells that he is too loud and that the children have to sleep. Genius. He lies on the floor completely speechless. Next to him, his skeleton friend peeks out as if saying, "You okay, boss?" Leaning towards him, she again says that children who sleep a lot usually grow and explains it as if he were 5 years old. She just glances at him and orders him to shut up. Gratitude is overflowing. You feel a complete systemic failure, yelling that she has become a giant old man. Or no, wait, she hasn't. Then she tries to state that his name is Takiaka Yu, and he meanwhile waves his hand and emphasizes, it's literally himself. In a tragic pose, she laments how she saved a boy who turned out to be a girl and now she is hungry. The logic is impeccable, our boy. His boyfriend just couldn't stand it, barked for her to be quiet while she yells back that she wants to eat. And she raises her voice again and again because, you see, that's how you get what you want. In such a short time, she is already happily eating. Finally, she gets proper food. It turns out you just gathered a takeout order for her and randomly pick some clothes from the roadside shop. Peak Dungeon Master Hospitality. We learn that her name is Millia, and since she is technically already an adult, the growth spurt didn't seem strange at all. Are you completely out of sorts? He says to her. I'll pay you for this now, but you owe me big time. Millia just blinks, opening her mouth, and asks what money is. Oh, this is going to be serious. Well. Then she leans on his head and tries to reproach him, saying that it's because he did that so a pretty girl would repay him the debt. But Yu is completely protected. She just lists how her rough language and other behavior repel almost everyone completely. She is truly hurt when she asks if he really feels no attraction to her at all. His dead face and silent gaze are the only answer she needs, and it's a loud no. He steps back a little, admitting that maybe he's a bit interested, but she is confused by his complete lack of enthusiasm. After a minute of thought, you seem to have an idea. You let out a quiet ah. Millia, without taking her eyes off the main one, asks him where his house is while he is still inside mid-chew. This awkward silence after her words confirms everything. Our dungeon master really has no home. Then he suggests sending her back to her scary dad, but the cold silence from her side shows that's not a way out either. You caught that he saved her, which means you'll have to work in his dungeon to eat. It makes my thoughts take root and grow even before he can find the words. My dungeon. She puts 2 and 2 together, asks if he is a dungeon master, and he confirms just as casually and simply. Millia is stunned to the point of madness. With a trembling, uncontrollable flow of words, she declares that she has never met a dungeon master before. Our guy is completely confused because she keeps calling him cool, a word he has never heard before. Her enthusiastic praise works 100%. He blushes while she gasps at how he took everything under control. He tries to keep a calm face, but Lionel, showing no emotion, immediately throws out. The boss is too easily swayed by flattering words. As soon as Millia became a fan, she immediately demands a grand tour of the whole place. You also show off confidently, so you warn her not to get lost, and Lionel interrupts again, saying he surrenders to everyone without a fight. The first stop is a huge high-tech command center filled with skeletons, and this paralyzes Millia. She simply cannot breathe a sound. He greedily absorbs everything around, puffing out his chest with pride for his impressive setup. So far, 2 of the skeleton staff are just gossiping about the trouble happening here. Lionel explains to Millia that the boss actually likes such wasteful spending, and you deny this. Then Miria's attention is caught by a giant screen. She points at it and demands to know what it is. You explain that it is a live map of the dungeon. It shows the general location of any opponents inside. She decides that you mean only travelers, but you clarify, not only for them. And then he drops a bombshell. Even the merchants managed to clear his dungeon. This news completely resets Miria's mind. For merchants to clear a dungeon unheard of. You simply told her that it is easier to show than explain and assured her there is no real danger. She is still recovering from the story about the merchant until Lionel starts naming his boss's methods, to put it mildly, unconventional. You laid out the rules and ordered Miria. If she is going to eat other people's money for free, she should get used to your orders. After that, he shows the teleportation panel and entrance requires a quite reasonable fee, 1 silver coin. Myriad immediately bursts out crying, as if to say she is poor but you don't care about her money problems. Dryly, with an expression of absolute indifference, he cuts off, saying he is not going to fleece the panelists. He simply orders her to move on and leaves Myriad broken by his cold indifference. Her mood changes instantly. She joyfully rushes into battle with the dungeon and you remain completely confused. He waves goodbye to you and confidently believes that he has just solved his freeloading problem forever. But this is just a prank. The system is programmed for petty revenge, so it will not disappear anywhere. Our guy laughs and slaps his skeleton, encouraging. She will return all too soon, and he remains confident because his traps will already work. Suddenly you shudder. Everything comes too easily to her. She casually strolls nearby with a drink in her hand. His miserable team walks around in complete panic, screaming that she just took and emptied the whole thing. Myriad just looks back and, confusedly stumbling over explanations, insists that she saw all the traps perfectly. In the cauldron, the skeleton trembles terribly and he himself thinks, strange people, do they really like such simple traps? Lionel again shifts attention to confirmation, and his skinny friend just looks exhausted and gives up on all this. Then our guy clearly lays everything out, what exactly it means to be able to see where all the traps are set. Miria casually explains, it's just a flow of magic, nothing special, no problem. This ability actually reveals to her the entire magical nerve center of the dungeon, and the traps simply lose their meaning. His brain froze, the screen turned blue, and he has absolutely no idea what she is talking about. Miria looks at him intently, stubbornly, without any refusal, as if directly asking, are you an idiot? The disrespect is incredible. And you need to take a deep breath and remind yourself that you are an adult, a mature person. Of course, friend. Yui grabs her face and forces her to explain this ability to see magic down to the smallest details, in all painful detail. She lays everything out and asks how a trap can even hit a person who is flying in the air. You, unable to hide your self-satisfaction, answer. He just extended the activation range of the traps up to the sky, but Miria is just waiting for an excuse. She tears him apart for setting traps without understanding the most basic thing, the thing they rely on. She points to the activation field right in the middle of the magical presence, and there, like a dead hint, lies everything you need to know. And if you see it with your own eyes, you don't even need to remember anything, you can just politely move on, as if there really are no problems here. You immediately break out in sweat. You decide that this is some special power available only to demons. This revelation throws him into a panic. He shouts that all his traps need to be redone immediately. Meanwhile, outside, one of our comrades rushes forward and shouts that something terrible has happened. He was just standing over those punks he crushed, insisting that it was nothing, that he wasn't serious at all. But the friend immediately clarifies, this is not the problem, the real emergency is something else entirely. Completely baffled, R just asks what the hell he is talking about now. This guy theatrically points a finger and announces that just out of nowhere a completely new underground passage has just opened, and And here you go, a new entrance has hidden itself in the alley between the restaurant and the shop. They noticed the entire area suddenly opened wider, and this left his companion completely confused. Even our people froze in disbelief. They don't understand where this cavity suddenly came from. His friend adds, supposedly everything happened without a single sound, and that sends chills down the spine. Suddenly, the attention of both is drawn to something barely visible from the side. He notices the sign, the original first dungeon for beginners, still hangs here. And nearby, an absolutely new sign for the second beginner dungeon. His head already starts to hurt. He mumbles that this dungeon always manages to exceed his expectations. He quickly pulls himself together, straightens up, stands firm, and seems ready for any new twist. A crowd has already gathered near the new entrance. Someone is trying to push through the people to get there first. The word spreads like wildfire, and suddenly everyone is shouting that the famous adventures have finally arrived. The crowd buzzes. Everyone wondered if it was true that he came to challenge the newly created dungeon, which. Just then, a stern-looking high-level adventurer named Bogart approaches, asks if Ours are interested too. Ours immediately asks if Bogart has ever completed the first * beginner dungeon, and this confuses even this giant. Then he realizes he has never heard any rumors that anyone high-ranking like him has completed it. Meanwhile, somewhere behind, other travelers are celebrating. Good thing they kept their confessions secret. It turns out Bogart was so immersed in his grind that only now has he reached level 2 himself. Bogart simply waves it off. What matters to him is what, in his opinion, Ours think about this new second dish. This sign explains the new rules. 2 courses for beginners have opened and the advanced one will come out soon. He also adds an overly reassuring warning. Life is not in danger, and from this there is absolutely no hint of suspicion. Bogart notices a discrepancy. The rules do not match the first dungeon, and the limit of 5 people per group surprises him. Hours shrugs and wonders if all the parties will gather in the same place, but honestly says he has no idea. With a confident smile, Bogart raises a coin and announces that there is one very simple way to find out. Such a simple, no-nonsense approach looks as if it knocks the ground out from under our boyars in one move. He only smiles in response and agrees to the plan without any hesitation. They seal the deal with a fist bump and Bogart beams. A rare joint outing of the best adventurers, and he is completely delighted. This crowd is already buzzing with rumors. They say everything will be cleaned up in one sweep, and everyone is guessing what the reward will be. Bogart is completely calm, amused by how heated hours are, and he only smiles, restrained and with quiet confidence. They approach the entrance, an ordinary brick wall, with a slit for payment to pass through. Without any hesitation, Bogart inserts a coin into the machine and pays for the path inside. Ars gives a signal and tells Bogart it's time to go inside. And Bogart is electrified with excitement. He is ready for whatever happens next. Ars repeats his step and throws his own coin to complete the registration for the party. He is already convinced that the second name of the dungeon is a complete joke and awaits another round of nonsense. But suddenly he remembers. The first dungeon was already cluttered with things that should not have been there at all. So he prepares himself to face whatever this new course throws back at them. In a flash of light, he is suddenly teleported into a dark, empty space. Bogart lands right nearby, stunned to the edge, and asks what kind of place this is at all. Hours confirm that they were teleported to the same place and thus answered one of their previous questions. The first thing they notice is a completely unexpectedly frightening silence in the room. Only by the flow of air do Hours sense they are somewhere in a huge open space. Suddenly a system message appears, the start of the dungeon and an exit if they leave the light. After that, they repeatedly say the same reassuring disclaimer. Supposedly there is no risk to their lives. These rules clarify the main point. Any failure when monsters activate traps ends with immediate ejection, and they specifically emphasize this because they ask exactly about monsters. They both immediately nod. These are definitely not the rules of ordinary dungeons. And then the harshest part begins for teams. Any failed action by others ruins the whole party with an asterisk. They all get ejected. The system explains that here you can only walk on lit paths, but you can fly as much as you want. And it seems Bogart is really interested in the attack, although it is unclear which exact part you mean. Bogart simply enjoys this. He grins, blooms with a smile, and the attack rule "do as you want, just act" fits him perfectly. Then the system lays out the reward for this whole affair: 1 gold coin. Hours immediately rejects this, deciding that 1 coin is a pitiful reward, not even worth the effort. But just as he was about to write it off, the system throws in something very important, however. Then it explains if no one clears the dungeon, the prize money carries over to the next day. Both of them. They are completely confused and demand an explanation of what this even means. This system explains 10 days 10 gold, 100 days 100 gold. This is a jackpot dungeon. Such a revelation completely shatters their expectations. The potential reward is simply colossal. But for now, however, the system confirms the current reward is only that 1 single gold coin. They just stand and freeze in stunned silence, trying to digest this crazy new mechanism. The bars immediately start calculations and conspiracies. The smartest move: wait 10 days and then grab the big prize. Bogart just disgustedly snorts in response to objections and insists that this will never work. And our people agree with this. Travelers are too greedy to ever cooperate for a bigger reward. Bogart figures that the daily gold coin is still a profitable deal, but at the same time suspects. As soon as the first clear result appears, difficulties will sharply rise. Drawing a conclusion from this logic, our people decide, let them just test the waters right now. Bogart is more confident than ever. A team of 5 people should do this without any problems, a clean victory. But Hours are still stuck in the rule of joint responsibility, and it is precisely in it that the main trap is felt. With the remaining determination, he steps forward and simply says, it's time to move. As soon as he steps out of the spotlights, the path glows, flares up with flame, and over the huge dark abyss travel sparks along the way. They both freeze in place and stare into the distance. Only then does it become clear how colossal the new threat has become. Bogart stands with his arms crossed over his chest, and with an expression of incredible boredom already looks at all this dark emptiness. Casting a glance at the glowing paths, he notices how absurdly gigantic this place seems. The guards ignore this too, the chasm, probably over a kilometer wide, a trifle. Then his gaze sharply shifts aside, and he announces in a calm tone that the enemies are already approaching. Our guy looks more interested than scared, and that, as always, is a great sign. And their first opponents are a whole pack of cute little stone potato golems. A quick check confirms without any doubt. these are not living beings, just monsters animated by pure magic. One of them even points to the path on the right as if hinting at something friendly, not a trap. Bogart is already ready to just smash everything that comes his way, and it seems to us that this is the best plan. But just as they were about to move, his eye catches a very strange detail. While Bogart rushes forward like a freight train, R notices something on the golem's hand. A closer look reveals some symbol is carved into her stone palm. He shockingly concludes this is the control for teleport, a one-touch instant reset button. Carrie shouts a warning to Bogart, don't let him touch you or both will be expelled. This big guy looks completely stunned as the golem's hand sneakily closes about to place the mark. Gritting his teeth, Bogart desperately tries to maneuver at least enough to pull the body out of the strike. Even the golem looks surprised by his speed, a true proof of high-rank level reaction. He barely manages to dodge and immediately swings the axe for a powerful counterattack. With a serious roar, Bogart puts all his strength into the strike and cleanly chops off the monster's arm in one motion. This axe strike, with a satisfying crunch, shatters the golem's limb into 1,000 fragments. The target in Bogart exploded into dust from the blow completely, as if it was blown away by a single hit. With heavy panting, he lands clearly satisfied with his one-shot stunt. Even Ours looks a bit stunned. They demonstrate raw power to such an extent. Bogart grumbles about what a torment the golem was, although he just erased it. He just scolds him for such recklessness only because it was a pathetic golem. The road ahead is too narrow, so risking and running into marks of their instant hand throws for disposal simply not allowed. Our guy decides it's time to change tactics and calls a magic circle. A stream of magic bursts from his hand and rushes straight at the cluster of rock potatoes. But it just pierces a small smoking hole through one of them and almost nothing more. Ours confirms his theory. Magic supposedly is definitely the least risky way to deal with such things. Bogart just glances sideways and waits for a new game plan. This new plan is simple. Bogart will lure them and Ours will take them down one by one with magic. With a smile, Bogart immediately goes into provocation, mocking the stone monsters and drawing all their aggression onto himself. He easily dodges their clumsy swings, choosing the perfect bait. Instead of letting them tear apart his own, he deflects the blow with his plasma axe. Bogart shot the kid so that he flies straight into our line of fire. Ours is already waiting, fires another precise magical shot. His spell perfectly intertwines with the airborne golem, and it's a direct hit. From this blow, the monster tumbles off the shimmering path and falls into the abyss. Bogart triumphantly shouts, confirming, one monster is officially down, it won't get up anymore. Ours is fully on board with this plan, ready to maintain the same pace. And Bogart immediately puts it into action, tosses another golem into the air and deflects it. And Ours are already waiting. Magical circles spin up, preparing the perfect shot. His spear spell bursts forward and pierces the flying stone, hitting the potato with pinpoint accuracy. One more and again, it rolls, helplessly falls off the shimmering path straight into the chasm below. Bogart looks back and it's clear he's impressed. Their little system works way too well. Then the golem flies too close to us. It already knows it has entered the splash zone. Bogart understands. His sword is almost powerless against these creatures. It wasn't forged to cut through rocks and stone guts. So he rushes back, trying to gain at least some distance from the clumsy monster. As soon as Bogart crashes into the frame and grabs the axe, he intercepts the golem with his giant blade. Our lands safely slipped out of harm's way, and he doesn't take his eyes off, like a partner carrying all the heavy work. This golem swings, but Bogart is ready for everything. He only barely smiles and thinks, after all, they are still monsters. And Bogart proves his point with one clean swing. He completely tears the golem apart. Bogart laughs and shouts to Ours, to the one standing alone on the narrow ledge holding his balance, nodding to him with a thumbs up, and saying he made himself way too good a bait. That was truly a very high compliment. When everything came together again, Bogart swallows the admission. He knew our hits struck his shots with flawless accuracy. With a confident smile, Ours says it's time to move on, and at the same time surprisingly doesn't notice the small shadow behind him. Even one of the rock potatoes seems to notice something strange is happening. And then he finally turns sharply, completely unexpectedly, as if someone had just sneaked up on him unnoticed. This little shadow is another golem, and it is heading straight for Ours without any deviations. She dashed forward the teleport punch, with her hands stretched out to ruin the whole party with a single touch. He barely had time to shout, "Wait," before the golem's palm actually touched him, and with a cute little star PFF, the game was officially over for our heroes. Suddenly, he is sitting again at the table in a bright room, completely confused. Meanwhile, the other two travelers, without taking their eyes off the monitor, confirmed. Ours and Bogart failed, and not that they expected anything else. Returning to the chair, the boy thoughtfully wonders why such a high-ranking official as Bogart even started to get close to him. He finds the answer. Bogart's intuition suggested that their opposite characters would make a strong team, and he immediately calls his boss. And his boss, a skeleton, calmly, as if it were a trifle, clarifies whether the reward in the dungeon is really that great. The boy just turns to him, asks what he means, and calls him Lionel, so the skeleton finally gets a name. New girl Myra explains, the jackpot system works only when people actually pay daily to play. But we don't care, they say the first dungeon already brings enough to cover expenses at least for now. Lionel's skeleton adds, the longer it drags on, the greater their real profit becomes. This whole system is created to make adventurers drool over a huge jackpot like 100 gold coins. Looking at the numbers, our notes dryly show, profit from 1 coin a day doesn't even cover their expenses. So this is the real plan. Let the prize money accumulate, calculate it, and only then clean it out oneself. For this whole scheme to work, the most important thing is to set the difficulty perfectly. Because in these games, if the prize becomes too big, some top player just flies in and ruins the game for everyone. The goal should look like it can be won by others, but secretly guarantees that only he can overcome it. Lionel says the whole system relies on a lottery, then asks, what is a lottery? Our skeleton tries to explain the lottery's economics, but Lionel's skeleton has long been bored out of his mind. This whole idea rests on one thing, to tweak the power of the gleam so that it is strong enough others can't handle it easily but still conquerable for him. Lionel compliments our magic, saying it supposedly has no bottom, but then immediately clarifies, actually it does have a bottom. Eventually, it turned out that he himself created our rock potato golems with a new spell he just unlocked. He can even make more skeletons like Lionel, but for now assembling a whole army is too expensive. So the plan is this, let the adventurers break into the dungeon and he waits until his power grows. Ours takes on the task and asks Lionel about the exact price of the magic to maintain those golems. And Lionel clearly enjoys this. He says his boss already has the reputation of a legendary mage. Because even top military mages can summon only one of these creatures, while ours produce them massively. Moreover, Lionel immediately reveals his cards. We already have our own. He gathered his own small squad, White Bone Knights. One of the skeletal minions even climbs onto the stage to immediately declare how cool their team name is. Myra even exclaims that the name is actually incredibly cool. And ours completely indifferent. He thinks Myra is just simple and narrow-minded for getting so worked up. He brushed off everything with the classic, what difference does it make, and definitely did not share their enthusiasm. Now that this is settled, it's time to move on to the next stage of the plan, preparing the third dungeon. Ours tells Lionel that they need to do it tonight to prepare, and leaves Myra completely in the dark. And Myra immediately hooks them, digging, demanding to be told what this thing is. He just shuts her up, cutting off, saying that children don't need to know this, and of course, this phrase instantly gets Myra going. Then he finishes off, saying that adults don't start yelling just because they're hungry, and this is already a level of solid trolling. That became the last straw. Myra breaks into frantic sobbing and falls on him while he begs her to stop. He presses against the ground and shouts that Myra's fists are too dangerous, she needs to stop. She only sighs and runs through one thought in her head. Why does he get so easily fired up from a simple touch, as if from a girl like her? Our guy starts sweating, suddenly realizing her power can make him turn inside out, all the secrets of his past life right to the skeletons. And he just bolts from the spot, yells at Myra not to run away, although he himself rushes away at full speed. Myra shouts after him, completely furious. He disappears, even though she had already planned the layout of her room. His consciousness spirals into a melancholy spiral as he runs, and before his eyes flashes how he falls into an endless abyss of paranoia. Wandering through the realms of memories, our hero firmly decides he simply does not have the right to let his memories leak out. Yet he begins to think about how insanely useful her ability could be for interrogating spies and criminals. But that's all. After a long dramatic pause, our guys just shrug their shoulders and brush it off with their classic whatever, deciding to postpone the issue. In his training cave, he sums up, he doesn't need her power, so let her stick to her daily task. He is bursting with pride. He honestly admits that he actually loves his daily sparring sessions with Lionel and the whole team. And this daily routine suddenly turns into road repairs. Meanwhile, somewhere in a luxurious mansion, some rich man is screaming in furious delight that someone is incompetent. And the Lord, in a furious rage, his people still cannot find some demon girl. He even throws a fork at one of his knights to finish their opinion. That's what a real leader is. That night, Captain Brandy can only kneel and apologize for the complete failure. A flash from the past. Somewhere in captivity, some bandit grumbles that during the escort he was treacherously ambushed by regular soldiers. It seems they attacked the escort, but during this they themselves ran into capture. But the real target, Myra, still disappears, and we see how the same bastards drag her away. This lord is still shouting at full volume, refusing to believe that his target could have simply vanished. Captain Brandy can only apologize, trying to explain the situation to his overly composed superior. With an irritated groan, the lord grabs his head. It is clear that this helplessness annoys him. So he orders to send for Brandy. Just find where she got stuck in the dungeon and finish this already. Brandy has to report bad news. The demon girl was not seen anywhere, no trace. This lord starts throwing out theories, hoping that she simply disappeared in the forest, supposedly eaten by wild dogs. Then he reasons, whoever flees into the forest should have hidden in the dungeon, but she nowhere. Then Brandy is simply sent away as if he is trying to escape, while another fork flies towards him. Outside, his smug vice captain asks if he managed to survive this encounter. Then he lifts the bloody rag from Brandy's head and sarcastically asks if this should be considered proof that she survived. Brandy buries his face in his hands and bitterly complains that this pig is running them. His vice captain only sniffs with a smile, happily babbling that he should not call the nobility pigs, and Brandy's doesn't even listen. As soon as the vice assistant leaves, it becomes obvious to everyone. Almost everyone hates the Lord and is just waiting for the moment to overthrow him. He does not hide it. The Lord has no real duties, and Brandy is simply too exhausted to care about it at all. Brandy immediately realized this chatterbox might turn out to be her future son-in-law. And although he is essentially not wrong, they are still just mercenary soldiers. The scene moves to the walled city of Runefort. It is clearly visible from the neighboring hill. The high walls are supposed to keep out every single enemy inside. This city is the center of the entire territory, a bustling settlement called Runefort. There everyone is introduced to the new guy Lucas. At least it seems so. He is from here, from this same town. But then it becomes clear that this is exactly the same city where our hero arranged his little dungeon scam. This vice captain lays everything out clearly. Their boss is no better than other lords. He has a whole portfolio of mansions. When he leaves, he asks why the lord is so obsessed with the demonic girl, and directly states that his reasoning is complete BS. It turned out that Piggy Lord spent a lot of money on another noble, just for one thing, to buy Myra as a slave. And the ambush was prepared not for random guards, there were the lord's own troops. The vice captain is pissed that some bandit didn't live long enough to cover them with a silent lid, but Brandy quickly stops him. Since she is not on any main road, only one thing remains. She is hiding somewhere in the forest or in a dungeon. This vice captain shows Brandy's search in the opposite direction from Runefort, suggesting that she will flee the city. After all those searches, they returned with nothing but to the deputy captain's consolation. Brandy stops at the worst option. She was just eaten by monsters in the forest. It is then that the scout rushes up and brings news, interrupting the vice captain, saying she is already dead, and bursts right into his speech. This scout reports haltingly that his team did come across something shocking Brandy's completely. He tells them that they found a bandit hideout squeezed on the mountainside. Brandy clenches her fist. Finally, a reliable lead on the bandits appears in her hands. Earlier, he had already considered the bandit hideout as one of the possible points where she could be. The official version claims that the skeletons were cut out by bandits, but this is a lie from the first to the last word. In fact, the bandits simply kidnapped Myra and immediately took her back to their camp. Brandy stands confused. The local dungeon here is just an attraction, and there were no skeletons there. They have already interrogated the travelers who passed through the dungeon, and no one saw anything. So he concludes, almost certainly, Myra was dragged away into that bandit lair. The only thing that doesn't add up is why the robbers were left tied up by the road. Brandy's people are already fully ready. They report that the squad is ready to set out immediately. The vice captain, troubled by brazen self-satisfaction, asks for orders, and Brandy quietly considers the next step. This decision was made to rush in and smash the bandits, much wiser than dealing with their boss. Meanwhile, in our dungeon, another opponent is biting into the dust face first, at full power. The new traveler was completely stunned by the potato golem, and could not understand what kind of crazy trap it was actually holding. His partner, a big burly guy, bursts out laughing and roars with laughter, admiring the priceless expression on the child's face. And then this guy simply breaks down. He is mortified that his friend saw how pathetic he looked. They immediately understood everything. As soon as 4 golems appeared, the dungeon master must be incredibly powerful. The same one-time teleportation, a top-level skill, which means this is truly a very treacherous labyrinth. Sitting in the lobby, they sum up. This was only the introduction. The real dungeon remains a mystery. At that moment, the door to the room slowly creaked and opened, and a new arrival appeared on the threshold. It turned out to be Bogart, a high-ranking one who had come before, and with a face full of determination, he was about to try again. This young traveler freezes in shock when he finally realizes the famous Bogart has returned and is once again preparing to fight someone who exposed him. From the control room, the boy asks if he came for revenge, and Lionel already foresees the same outcome. Meanwhile, Bogart just scratches the back of his head and looks as if he really is guilty of everything that happened. Then he turns to us and, making a completely incredible decision, apologizes deeply, sincerely, without any pretension. Our guy just stands silently and, strangely enough, is not at all impressed by that sudden humiliation. Bogart admits he was a complete jerk, bragged and got cocky because he cleared other dungeons too quickly. It's surprising how he just flies into the conversation with that cold-blooded tone, and yes, this is a legendary powerful move. That high-ranking one gives up his pride and asks, Please, cooperate with him once more. Ours will brush it off without any obligations. I know, and will not flinch while Bogart humiliates himself and begins to beg. He clearly emphasizes, cooperation with him gives Bogart the leader absolutely no advantages. So he is basically asking, what is the point of all this? But Bogart does not give up, insists that he wants to cooperate and eventually forces us to acknowledge him. Our guy only responds with a look, still digesting the sharp change of heart from the confident traveler. This veteran admits, ours is one of those who pulls everything alone in solitude, a stubborn wolf, a wolf to the end, and F. In fact, he heard that almost all our main achievements were made without the party. Bogart leans forward and nods. A smart kid like ours probably already guessed the truth of this dungeon, and that neither his previous experience nor any tactics will work here. That is why he emphasizes, ours needs someone with a different perspective to actually succeed. No sooner does he manage to voice the thought than another voice cuts in from the side. Hey, these are other travelers they left earlier and overheard the entire conversation. They seize the chance and ask if they can join the party too, saying they have dreamed all this time of forming a team with us. Someone adds that this dungeon levels everyone, so maybe finally they will have a chance to be useful. Everyone is surprised, but we only smile. We pick up their idea and immediately agree, while somewhere behind Bogart laughs. So he solemnly proclaims it. They will all work together to develop a strategy. Of course, in his head he is already calculating how to end up in second place, and as soon as the time comes, he will immediately clean everything up. The main thing is to keep a low profile. Suddenly some random newcomer gets in his face and demanding asks his name. What a handsome guy. The scene cuts off and we are already in the tavern. Two other travelers sit at a table drinking and arguing. One of them, who has his eyes tied, accuses his partner, saying he would have gone much further if he had not been held back. This guy with the blindfold shouts at his partner for a long time, until suddenly Lionel appears and demands they stop the quarrel. Ours simply states dryly that the travelers have really started holding strategic meetings, and this becomes a real shock. It seems ours have already shared some information, but even with its help no one has yet managed to clear the second floor. And then some absolute weirdo in glasses bursts in, jumping, swaying, and shouting about his master's new dungeon. He is immediately taken down with one hit by a potato golem, truly a magnificent entrance. Our notes say Luca Rookie got the farthest before he got scared and fled. So Lionel suggested it's time for them to move, and ours calmly agreed. Then the scene sharply switches to a quiet forest, just as night begins to fall. Our guy is confident he will manage to reach the first city before the day ends. Lionel urges him with the thought that at this late hour there will be no carriages, so they will have to go on foot. He also adds that after investigating the soldier, the bandits should no longer be a problem for them. He just habitually says, yes, yes, while they continue on their path. R quietly counts something, simultaneously setting the time of day. Then he lets out a huge yawn and unhurriedly tells his boss to turn right. In a moment he is already grumbling that the boss has gone too far ahead of him. Steps on the foot and gives another precise direction. From there it turns right. The skeletal companion asks if the ground will collapse now, and ours replies, no, he is leveling the soil. This boy explains that this very skill turns the soil into a solid monolith and throws a question. Does it really work all the way to the ceiling? Our boy confirms and explains that is why the ground so confidently holds its shape on the surface. Everything falls into place. We see him riding a cart, and in a moment he is enlightened. On the highway, the soil is worn by continuous movement. He adds that leveling the soil precisely gives a perfectly smooth surface. His idea is simple and straightforward, to actually cover the entire highway, making it as smooth as asphalt. And all this is only part of a bigger plan, which already lays the foundation for the opening of the third-star dungeon. Because attracting ordinary people, not just adventurers, is the key to long-term profit. That is why road maintenance for his business empire is an absolute must. Better roads bring more traffic, and more traffic means more challenges for his dungeon. When the zone is confirmed as safe, he will drop his third dungeon on them, a masterful lesson in market timing. Lionel says they are only a kilometer from the city, and judging by the pace, they have arrived properly. Climbing out of the hole in the ground, he casually winks at his bony company and says he can go back, which triggers a full-fledged jump scare in movie style from Lionel, and it seems he is not a fan of the dark at all. Yes, a child in a skeleton costume jumping out of a hole at night really looks scary. They are just lucky that no one saw them. A random person would probably have died of a heart attack. But Lionel strikes a pose and reminds that he should be grateful for the personal GPS service. Then Urs cuts in, don't even think about putting a foot near the entrance, the very one they just used. As soon as the path is confirmed as a straight line from here, they are ready to finish everything to the end. Our guy is showing off on his face with that incredibly self-satisfied mini, and is already preparing to release his next big move. He sharply throws his hands forward, preparing to apply his signature road-laying magic. And with a dramatic finish, He shouts ground leveling like a construction superhero coming on stage with a gesture. He knows this can't be handled all at once, so he will just nibble off a little bit at a time. And with this, the two step-by-step disappear into the night on their freshly leveled path. Lionel is still trying to piece together the magic, and calls his boss's travel spell for 1 km simply crazy. And Hours just cuts dryly. His magic is nothing special compared to what real travelers can truly do. He talks about showy spells like Giant's Iron Hammer. They say it's something extremely important. This skeleton proves, summoning it costs about the same as those pompous spells around 1000 MP. Of course, this whole 1000 MP concept just flies past Lionel's empty head. Summoning monsters is a crazy mono-drain, and Lionel demonstrates this clearly. He has a potato golem striking a pose. Our guy calls such magic a complete waste because it instantly blows the skeleton away. Meanwhile, Lionel boasts and argues that he is the best investment because he works forever. Just one set of components is enough. And this immediately turns into full-blown panic. Our guy subtly, with a smile tinged with amusement, directs it towards the hyped existential collapse of his own skeleton. He tries to calm down, saying, "Don't worry, and they will still use him until his bones literally wear down to dust, and that doesn't make it any easier." At that very moment, Lionel announces that they have already arrived, and emerges behind the strangely confused Rs. They stand right in front of the building, and everything around looks as if it is a real fantasy town. Finally, it begins to sink in. He really ended up in a city and moreover in another world. The darkness of their tunnel remains behind and a skeletal companion comes out, dragging a new plan behind him. With a luxurious flourish, he declares that this is the very city and Lionel agrees without hesitation. Our guy raises his hands up as if he just won the lottery and shouts that he finally achieved his goal. After that brief moment of pure joy, the smile disappears from his face and he turns back to Lionel again. They slip into a dark chasm between the walls, into a black alley because of course they are still underground. And just as the city streets appear before us, someone is wildly angry, but who exactly? When the road repair is finished, Lionel asks if there is anything in the city related to our business that needs to be settled. He just throws an incredibly tired look at him, by no means to be happy about such a question. Then he explodes shouting that he wants to buy food, get new clothes, and maybe even fall in love ordinary things for a normal life. Lionel tries to calm him down. He sees that his boss is going through a real teenage crisis. For a moment he seems to agree. Staying at home is normal, but it is clear that he is by no means satisfied with it. Then Lionel comes up with a galaxy brain-level idea. What if we just drill a tunnel right into the house? Our guy is just a tiny shadow, completely stunned by this absolutely crazy proposal. This thought hasn't even had time to settle in his head, and now he is thrown off balance just by the sheer audacity and boldness. He understands, there really are roofs underground, they are just attached to houses that do not belong to him. This leads to an interesting legal loophole. Is it still considered breaking and entering if you crawl in from below? Resolutely deciding to test this theory, R sends Lionel to scout the appropriate target. And with a cheerful "let's go," the skeleton happily and swiftly runs off to engage in the simplest unauthorized entry. Hours waits at the bottom of the stairs like a frightened kid on his first robbery ever. In a moment, Lionel's skull jumps out right next to the drunk sleeping man, and the poor guy gets the scare of his life. Back underground, Hours starts losing his head and scolds Lionel for being such a fool. Lionel reports guiltily, he really could not confirm whether there is a house nearby. Then Hours simply hits him, ordering him to stand up and this time do the job properly. Then we see Lionel's skull sticking out of the ground, a spectacle that must be admitted, simply insanely surreal. Sticking his head out of the hole, Lionel notices something interesting, but everything remains just off-screen. He reports, nearby just 10 meters away right next to their position, there is a problem. When the target was very close, our guides led Lionel through the tunnel ready to test his brilliant theory B and E. He stops and decides, the perfect place to start their completely legal home invasion. With a maniacal smile he declares, time to start the experiment, and simply punches a hole in the ceiling. But just then something immediately pulls him back and lashes him so that he flies, no matter how you twist it, and the plan is over. Completely stunned, he tries to understand what the hell pushed him away so strongly. Sitting in place and grumbling that it felt like a devastating rejection, something he had never encountered before. Lionel simply asks why he threw a tantrum and tells him to stop taking out his anger on him, a classic employee response. Hours. Mars understands. There must be some kind of anti-magic barrier or field standing on this site that protects it. Then he orders Lionel to simply pierce through, but the sword bounces off and immediately breaks off. After considerable effort, Lionel manages to suppress the resistance and make a tiny hole to our surprise. Our guy wonders, could there really be protective magic here, and asks if this still counts as an invasion. Lionel starts whining that he is an accomplice to a crime, and our guy just tells him to shut up and go away. Flying out from underground like a bony gopher, Lionel confirms he really can get out of the tunnel. Our guy immediately demands a set report. What's the situation on the surface? Lionel replies that it is just a space under a normal floor about 70 centimeters high, and oh, there is a mouse there. He gives an indifferent "I see," with no reaction to this sensational message. Lionel raises his hand and a new thought clicks in his head. This is how this obstacle works. He is struck by the reason why it repelled. The ceiling remains a ceiling even when viewed from below. Having figured everything out, he decides it's time for him to look at what is happening himself. And just as his head popped out from under the floorboards, he was immediately hit by a very unpleasant surprise. He lies on the floor and shouts at Lionel, "Shut up," while his skeleton just mumbles that he himself is too loud. Then Lionel proudly introduces a new friend, a real little mouse he found under the floorboards. Our guy immediately loses his composure. He shouts that it's not cute and demands to get rid of this filth. And Lionel, ever the optimist, suggests, let's just keep it as a pet, truly a creepy idea. He insists that this ugly, dirt and germ-covered rat creature is still full of charm, which we fiercely disagree with. This little mouse even strikes such a cute pose, and Lionel becomes even more convinced that it's trying to win our favor. This argument escalates with such a roar that it throws our guy out of the burrow, while Lionel calmly points out the volume problems of his boss. Suddenly a voice thunders from above, "Come out," and we panic thinking the owner has caught them. But it's not the homeowner, it's two men who look extremely angry and accuse them of sneaking into the Adventurers Guild. We are completely baffled. No one understands how everything turned out this way. Finally, the Adventurers Guild arrives and cold sweat starts pouring like a river. Meanwhile, Lionel arrogantly winks and gives a thumbs up. Of course, he planned it all. Someone shouts from above, "Stab them with knives underground." And our people are overwhelmed by a full panic frenzy with a series of hold on to life. The camera shows a wide shot of the town. It has no idea about the drama unfolding in the guild. The scene sharply jumps to a bright daytime sky, and this unmistakably indicates a sharp shift in time or place. We suddenly find ourselves in some empty lecture hall, a completely different place. A new skeleton, simpler in appearance, talks to a boy who suspiciously resembles ours, only in different clothes. Nearby, a horned girl with white hair puffs up, grumbles that she is being bullied and snaps. She hates this room. This R, like a doppelganger, just glanced at the clock and calmly stated, "The room is exactly 22 degrees and 75 humidity." She immediately waves it off. This is not bullying, just something completely different, and then he listens as if nothing, without any irritation. This horned girl Millia whines that her room is too dark, and the ass-like one only asks if there is enough light at all. He explains that her room is the only one where the entire ceiling space is burning, and basically calls her a weirdo. This boy explains, his skeletons just stand around and loaf because they don't need furniture or sleep, so truly a minimalist life. One of the skeletons winks and hints that maybe Millia just wants a window for her room, a revolutionary idea for these places. She immediately agrees and says she wants to know the time and feel the wind on her face. It seems her guess is correct. Both the skeleton and ours look the same, so he freezes in thought for a moment. Millia complains that since she arrived, she has never gone outside even once, and this is a very alarming signal. But the guy whose name we just learned, Itsua, sharply shuts her down. There can be no talk of a window. She is completely thrown off by the refusal, and she asks why an ordinary window suddenly became such a big issue. After a minute of protest, she simply disappears under the pressure, blushing and whispering that she understands. But she has one condition: if she cannot have a window, she wants to move to a room far, far away from him. Her face is a complete mix of confusion and despair, as she asks why he is acting so stubbornly. Itsua explains, a window is just another entrance for invaders, and the main thing here is risk management. This angers her and she shouts, asking if she is not even family to him. He coldly replies no, then adds, you can just set teleportation traps and bypass it. Itsuo continues the lecture on safety in dungeons, laying out how the relay allows control over teleportation. Millia sharply retorts that distance and subtly matters and shouts about the emotional distance between them. He just waves it off. Supposedly, the distance between their hearts does not shorten at all. It turns out, it's the same from all sides. His emotional density, and because of it, his face wrinkles from pure, undiluted irritation. Finally, she clenches her teeth and whispers his name, Itsua, completely broken. Itsu simply shouts idiot at Milyu while nearby the skeleton calmly watches. The boss is officially furious. After that, he unleashes a whole barrage of reproaches. He pays for all her things, food, and furniture, so he asks if she has even a drop of understanding at all. But the skeleton suddenly jumps up and asks if by any chance it's all the other way around. Somewhere behind, tiny Itsuo looks completely confused. This skeleton explains. Itsuo simply does not understand human things, essentially calling him an emotionally repressed robot. Suddenly, Itsuya is hit by a system notification and instantly unlocks a whole range of new magical labyrinth abilities. He is completely confused, fusses around, and tells his skeletons that he just heard a voice, but they just stared at him as if he had completely lost his mind. And right before him appears a girl with a cool look in sunglasses, his imagination Chaos-chan, who it turns out is just an ordinary hallucination. One of his skeletons flies straight into his face and pokes, demonstrating how terrible it is to hallucinate and hire imaginary friends. We get a quick lesson. Dungeon's max MP grows by absorbing things like trash from Hotel's eco-friendly world domination. His imaginary friend Kyo-chan asked him to list the new labyrinth magic spells he just learned. He mumbles to himself, and it immediately feels, this new magic is completely different from anything he has ever used. The system menu pops up showing options like Labyrinth Occupation and Labyrinth Alliance, and it all looks suspiciously like a game interface. Kachin asks what Labyrinth Occupation gives, and the system dryly explains. It allows him to capture neighboring dungeons. He immediately clarifies, so this means he can just steal other dungeon masters' property. The system responds even more clearly. It's not limited to dungeons. Any building owned by another is also suitable for hostile takeover. And the pieces suddenly fall into place time, and again he was thrown back to the moment when an explosion from the ceiling of the Adventurers Guild destroyed everything, and he finally understands why. He was pushed away then because that building was considered the property of another organization. The diagram shows, as a dungeon master he can only walk through his own dungeons, but Lionel can go anywhere. Another diagram explains, he has no right to enter the guild because it is someone else's dungeon. Instead, his tunnel beneath it is his own territory. Itsuo tightens his cloak. A drop of sweat rolls down his face, and he suddenly sees the insane potential of occupying the labyrinth. Itsuo realizes that he can connect the underground buildings and deploy a subway for petty crimes throughout the city. His mind immediately grabs options. Free food, free clothes, all as bonuses for having an entire town. Excitedly, he asks Kyo-chan, does this mean he can just capture any asterisk dungeon he connects to? With a completely stone-faced expression, she confirms, his dreams of hostile takeover are indeed achievable. But the system still clarifies, the monocost changes for each target, so no freebies. This is one of the figures he will have to test it to see how it works. A classic pocket with a stick strategy. Then he asks about the Labyrinth Alliance option, which sounds too suspicious like diplomacy. This feature allows dungeon masters to visit each other and exchange functions, but only if they manage to agree on terms. Our guy is by no means thrilled at the very thought of cooperating with anyone. A cute simple diagram seems to hint, let the neighbor into the house, and he of course is against it. He grits his teeth and clearly realizes, what he can use depends solely on negotiations, a matter he hates the most. Suddenly we are thrown by a single editing transition to Itsuwa in a cloak. In front of her is a demon saying nearby there is another dungeon master. Returning to his eternally dependent skeleton, Itsuwa scans with his gaze searching for any clue. He asks Lionel if he has ever really met another dungeon master somewhere outside the dungeons. Lionel just shrugs. Itsuya is the first boss he was ever summoned to, but that is of little use. Another skeleton chimes in. Master can be anyone from black fog to living beings, and this definition is too vague. Itsuya resigns himself. Sooner or later he will have to talk to one of these rivals. Sighing, he decides to gather all the information he can before that happens. Next he asks Ki-chan to explain the option of surrendering the labyrinth just in case. She explains it is a way to officially give up your dungeon, yielding it to a neighboring master, the ultimate white flag. Itsuya instantly understands that capitulation is actually only one thing, completely abandoning your dungeon, a total rage quit. She clarifies, you lose all your labyrinth magic and officially resign your powers as a dungeon master. It couldn't be better, you don't even need someone else's consent. It's a one-sided I'm quitting. And our guy somehow manages to get to this and starts to rack his brains. Will he have to bargain to use this feature? Suddenly a completely different thought struck him and he froze as if stunned. Wait, something is wrong here. The words of this system echo in his head, you are no longer the dungeon master. And everything comes together into a coherent picture. If he is not the master, does that mean he can finally *leave the dungeon?